One thing we have to deal with, I think, in the Black community is the rope-a-dope. It is the rope-a-dope of like white people feel offended. They end up rope-a-doping into disciplining other for the shit that a lot of is probably doing in their household.
First things first, we have to acknowledge that Tyler Creator cultivated this racist fan base. This is a self-inflicted wound.
I feel like the apology thing is very top-down. And what I feel like is often missed in these conversations is never like bottom up, how did we get here? But what happened before he became this person?
I'm just sort of amazed by the ways that he's been able to reposition himself as somebody who is like this Black musical genius.
I want us to get past this idea of trying to pathologize particular groups of Black people and trying to act like they have a higher prevalence of anti-Blackness when that is not the case. People.
Hello, friend.
Hey, boo.
Let me tell you why I've gathered you here today. So Tyler, the Creator, unintentionally made himself, the subject of this week's lashing on everybody's timeline, because this is how it started. I'm going to give y'all just a little bit of background and then I'm going to give it to the room. Tyler, the Creator, made a post about D'Angelo, rest in peace to D'Angelo, and his fans was doing the racist things that they be doing. And so someone else, another one of his fans presumably, tweeted out, Tyler's fan base hates Black music, despite Tyler himself having a very deep love and appreciation for it. Nigga has Charlie Wilson, Erykah Badu, DJ Drama, etc. collaborations, and they still refuse to engage with Black art on any meaningful level. Very cannibalistic. And Tyler, the Creator, clicked like on this tweet, which, by the way, I thought we couldn't see Twitter likes no more. Someone have to tell me that. But anyway, Tyler, the Creator, clicked like on that tweet, and that immediately all hell broke loose, because I'm going to imagine these are the different factions of rage. His white fan base, like, how fucking dare thee? Like, how dare you? And then, like, who know Tyler Creator was like, why you keep acting like, like you just got a white fan base that acts like this out of the blue? Do you forget how you used to give it up? You're the reason they act like this. And then it was the that didn't know how Tyler the Creator that used to be was like, what? Gasp? What? He was a con? What is this? And so now there's a bunch of different conversations happening. I think I know a couple of like productive things in my mind. I'm like, we could talk about on what is an artist, what is their obligation? What is a Black artist's obligation to, how do they, approach or deal with having a white fan base or a fan base they deem as anti-Black? Like, what is the obligation, if any? But I'm gonna hand it to Dawn because I think you had some thoughts.
I have tons of thoughts. Thank you for inviting me, beautiful Black people. First things first, we have to acknowledge that Tyler Creator cultivated this racist fan base through about 7 years of being an edgy rage lord on the internet. So everything that is happening to him is things he did to himself. This is a self-inflicted wound. This is Cheddar Bob. And I do think the most important part about this, I think Olay said, is that Tyler has presumptively changed. Now, I've been having a lot of conversations on the internet. People are saying that maybe he's masking and maybe he hasn't changed at all. And maybe this is all just a new act he's given us. But presumptively he has changed. But I don't think Tyler has actually done the work to for us to not have the conversations about the things he used to do in his past. And I would like to say this off top. I've been pounding the table for Tyler the Creator to come on Olay Friends. Why? Because I think that this is the platform where, gotta get right. Laverne Cox had to get right. Tyler Creator gotta get right. I'm pounding the table for that.
That would test me right out. Even asking him, if Tyler Creator acknowledged me, it would be to cuss my ass out for even thinking, who the fuck? I said sorry to not nary one in 10 years. And you think I'm coming on where to talk to who, bitch?
But I do think it's a conversation though, right? It's a lot of Black women and a lot of queer Black people who are offended by the words he said. And I do think this platform has been a platform and a safe haven for those kind of people. So I'm like, yeah, like I believe that if you are offended people on the internet, what happened?
I'm laughing at Deshaun, laughing at you. Say it is a haven for the Black queers.
Hey, I check
We
my
know
analytics.
we do have a lot of Black queer representation on Olay
we
Friends, and we're
do.
proud of it.
Okay,
No,
shout out to
you know what I
that.
mean? Salute. Yeah, salute. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, people feel safe in this community, as they should. And I like, you know what I mean? And I do think, I mean, I don't know. I feel like when you offend people, especially people who have become your new fan base in the last decade or so, last 7 years or so, since Flower Boy, since the rebound he done, they know they didn't go back and do the knowledge on the Goblin and the Bastard era. They didn't do that. They just picked up for where he was at that point. And now they're being like retroactively offended by things that happen, and they have the right to be so. Like, I've been buying vinyls and t-shirts and going to concerts and singing your good praises, and you've been, and this who you was? Why didn't I know this?
How did anybody miss it?
That's my question.
I'm so sorry. I think
Pockets
like
of the internet
genuinely,
are
as
different.
somebody like who was not even like, I'm not a Tyler the Creator savant. I have a general like appreciation for who Tyler the Creator like appears to be, like music and pop culture references and whatnot of present day. And I will give credence to the idea that you could have radically changed since the time he came out to now, because I radically changed from the time he came out to now, because the reason I didn't f with Tyler the Creator, and if y'all know my thoughts, all my thoughts on Christianity that I've expressed on Olay Friends, you'll know how funny it is when I'm saying the difference between me then and me now. Because I remember the first time I ever heard Tyler the Creator, and like the last time for like 10 years was Yonkers, and all I heard was he came out with that scary ass beat talking about, I told Jesus to quit bitching, and I said, oh no, baby, turn this off. Turn this off. Not in my house. Not in my good God-fearing house. And so I'm like, well, I don't give it up like that no more. Like,
Yeah.
So, you know, but I also just don't know how missed it. Tyler Creator was like literally like Odd Future Wolfgang killed them all. Like them were the face of Edgelord trolling.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what my whole like orientation to this has been. Is like Tyler the Creator has been like an essential component of this sort of like blurring of Black grunge alt spaces with this like 4chan edgelord sort of like trolling that was happening in that era for so many people for so long, that for me it's like I don't even know how you like, I don't know how folks missed it, but I'm also just kind of like, that was always like that. He always moved like that. He never gave a fuck. And for me, I think I'm just sort of amazed by the ways that he's been able to like reposition himself as somebody who is like this Black musical genius that people gravitate towards now, as if that has not always been a part of his work. I don't know. I think for me, it's just like, I don't know enough about Tyler the Creator because I've not been a fan of his music to be able to say like, you know, he's always had an appreciation for Black artists and Black artistry. But what I do know is that he has always shitted on Black people. And I think like, I because of that, I could never fuck with him. I could never fuck with his music. And so finding out that now after D'Angelo's passing, for me, it's like, I don't know, join the club, welcome. I don't know, like.
And Nancy, what you think?
You know, a lot. I mean, I always thought that Tyler the Creator was corny as hell. I mean, just to be honest. And like, I don't know, because I feel like he's a year and a half, 2 years younger than me. And like when he was coming up in music, it was a weird thing because those of us that were openly queer, very, very young, right? The way we dressed at the time, with sometimes the skinny jeans, sometimes with the fitted, sometimes with the snapback hats, your little tight clothes, whatever. It was in that moment that it started becoming popular for like straight Black people to do it. And for that to be like this thing of them saying that they were edgy or they were different or they got to be an artist because they weren't gay, but they could wear these edgy type of clothes. They were kind of trading, right, on the ways in which Black people exist in the world, but also being homophobic as well. So I always saw him in that way. And then also he just did not seem like, and to put this, you know, this is Olay Friends, he doesn't like a real to me. Ever, never did. And now as I'm looking up his like background, I'm realizing like he's not African American. So that is telling me a lot of like his kind of entry to the culture. So his dad is Igbo, right? And his mom is half like Black American and white Canadian. So you have all this happening with him being raised in California, and then you see these things come out, and then the commentary that he's making, that people are saying is so controversial. It just really seems to be a lot of the ways that like so many of our Black immigrant homies will distance themselves from African Americans in order to kind of have a particular type of cultural cachet amongst white people, or to demonstrate that they're their own authentic type of Black people. So I see this weird shift, or this weird history with him, both in this distancing from African Americanness, but also this kind of queer baiting weird shit that happens with this kind of stylistic tropes. So I feel like this is what a lot of folks have done. This so tried and true, I think, really story across the entertainment industry, particularly with the rage baiting, right? I'm not a regular Black person. I'm a free thinker, right? It's that weird, I don't know, thing that kind of defies parties and stuff.
I guess I don't think Tyler the Creator. I don't think Tyler the Creator is a coon or had this era based on his daddy being Nigerian. Like I don't think that, as someone whose father is
To be
Nigerian,
clear,
and I
that's
think
not
that,
what I'm saying. To be
yeah,
clear, I just want to make the
yeah,
clear.
I know that
I don't think he's a coon.
That is what it will
Mhm.
quickly become, and it like can be
Yeah.
frustrating when you live like you watch an era, like you live this
Mhm.
era of tons of also Black Americans participating in this trolling, and people like Tyler the Creator would not even claim his Nigerianness half the time or whatever, like who consider themselves American and are Black, and a bunch of other Black Americans and engaging in this. But when it happens and there's like a moment to like, you know, focus on like pick out somebody, oh, like you're not a full American, that becomes like the conversation is those like, oh, these immigrants and they want to associate themselves and disassociate themselves. And it's like, no. And also this was a particularly American phenomenon of time of trolling and edgelording and all of this. So I don't like when, you know, I know that's where the conversation will go, and I'm like that's what it will become. Like people will fixate on that, and it's always interesting to me that Tyler the Creator, I found out 2 days ago when I saw a Dawn video that Tyler the Creator is Nigerian, is half Nigerian, as another half Nigerian, and it's like Tyler the Creator, when everyone's praising him for the last some years, he was just a Black. They was like making him a California artist, like specifically just the other day from Hawthorne or all this. He's like squarely American until they up. Then all of a sudden that becomes like, oh, like that's an African, that's a this, you know?
Yeah.
No, I think that's real, because I think there's a type of othering that we do as Black people too, right? And particularly not just like as Black as a race, but African American, what happens within the diaspora within the United States. But I also don't think that we can discount what happens within diaspora within the country, and we're kind of differentiating about, oh, who has a claim to culture. And at the same time, when somebody got a mixed or white mama, something else happens there. So I think that like we also have to be very clear about all of the cultural things that are happening that also allow you to perform, allow you to even have access to particular types of resources, like playing the piano at 12. Right, that's an amazing thing. A lot of motherfuckers in that part of LA probably want to have that opportunity, but you got the mama you got, and you got the dad you got, and they're providing this as a different culture background, this different flexibility. So I think that's part of it, but I also know what you're talking about in terms of someone saying, "Oh, there go them Africans, there go them immigrants doing that weird anti-Black shit." I'm not saying that at all,
and people
but I think that's part of the gumbo.
while watching a show held by a pro-Black, like you see what I'm saying? It's like I'm Nigerian, I am literally Bahamian Nigerian, and people will watch this show, a show that they consider pro-Black that surrounds them with Black voices and and the entire discourse will devolve into talking about the exact demographic of people. It'll be only the Tyler the Creators and them. It's like the me's don't get to be representative. We're sitting right here. We're not representative of
It's
Caribbean
ridiculous.
and African folk, but it'll be like the first time, and the minute and start cooning, immediately it's like, see them there?
Please.
See?
Yeah,
Girl, we all came right over there from Nigeria and Ghana. Let's not play.
I think too many conversations are happening about his identity, period. Like people are trying to like make it like I've seen people be like, oh, he's suburban. He's not a suburban Black. He's not anything but a coon. Like his Nigerianness, him being like whatever. He's just a coon who he's just one of those people who found out about his Blackness too late. And that's it. That's the thing that happens in our community often, when you realize that you are in fact a Black person. And I think that for a long time, it was this otherness that he tried to do, be like, oh, I'm cool. Oh, like you can say the N-word around me kind of thing. Where like, I think that at some point I can't, which is why I want to hear him actually talk about this. And I don't want him to like get around this, because I do think it could be a learning experience, because this is it's a common trope within our community of this kind of that, to be like, okay, how did you get yourself out of that pipeline? Like, what did you do, and where did you learn that you are not different, that you are still us? Like, nobody sees you as different, and I think that should be the conversation of like, okay, cool, it happened, but what did you do to fix it? And how did you get better? And how are you going to continue to get better and denounce some of that old shit and not just let it exist? On his last album, Chromacopia. He was telling us that he was going to moonwalk over those tweets. That's how blatantly he did not give a fuck about the things he said. He was like, I'm moonwalk. I don't care. That's insane to say, especially when some of that language was heavy. He was laughing at Trayvon Martin's death. Like, this ain't shit we could just like we've laughed, like we left the realm of just trolling and rage baiting. People are talking about, oh, he was young. He was 23 years old. This is not a teenager we're talking about. We're talking about an adult man. Like, their conversations need to be had.
I guess. Yeah, Jay.
I appreciate that take a lot, but I think it may have been more so because he was acutely aware of his Blackness. Like, I don't think that he just found out late. I think he was so acutely aware of it that he felt like he needed to get ahead of it in every space that he was in. You know, and it's not to say like that, like that's just my personal opinion. And I think, you know, I know people like Tyler, the Creator. I've been around them. I could have been one of them very easily if I fell into that particular group of people at my school where I grew up. Because it's not like he grew up in a predominantly white area. That wasn't the case. Ladera Heights is very Black, like especially in somewhere like Los Angeles, California.
But they said he ain't moved there till he was 17, though. So you got your formative years somewhere else. The Hawthorne before he went to Ladera Heights.
Also predominantly Black. Hawthorne is just another part of LA. So I feel like he's just very aware of his Blackness. And I think that there was some part of him that thought he could get ahead of it and get away from his Blackness. And the more distance he created, the less likely he was going to be to have the same type of experiences that maybe he was perceiving in his environment. And I do think it is something to be said, not that just because somebody's parent is Nigerian, but I do notice there is this element of absentee parent that also may culturally not match ethnicity wise with the other parent that keeps the child, because Doja Cat was doing the same shit. She was online doing the same exact thing. Like, she was an edgelord as well. So I think there's some element to that there of like not having that connection with the other parent and then just trying to create psychologically some level of distance so you don't have to feel whatever shame that you've compartmentalized in your brain. That's what I'm looking at it as.
And that's what I was getting at. That's what I was trying to get at. So I think you put it in better words to me, particularly when you started off talking about trying to get ahead of your Blackness. And I think I agreed with you at some point. I'm not a big fan of his music, so I can't go that deep into it. But I do think that even if he wasn't trying to get ahead of it, he was trying to make sure that whatever this kind of thing that could be used as a cudgel, right, is used as a sword for him rather than against him. And this also can be something that's monetized, right? Like, if there's going to be anti-Blackness in the world, and this is where I think that Dom was talking about him being, 23, I think is interesting. I see a lot of young Black men in their 20s, right, that try to flip anti-Blackness, but in fact end up being more anti-Black and not even knowing it, particularly in ways to monetize it or protect themselves and put on a type of emotional armor, right? And so I think that it kind of goes both ways, but I think there's also something that happens when you're making that much money in your 20s and you're trying to develop or redevelop or undevelop a racial and gender identity on a world stage, right? I don't know what would have happened if what I was thinking internally would have been put on X or Facebook or Twitter at 21, 22, 23, 19, And people would have gave a damn.
I feel like we give this nigga a lot of grace. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have the same, like, for me in my heart, I don't have the same leeway for some. Like, there is a difference between being somebody who culturally you find yourself in spaces that are more dominated by white people. Like, skate culture is one thing, being in the rock or punk music or all that kind of stuff that, like, culturally, like, Black people, it does line of hip hop. That's one thing. But there's another thing to take on the ideologies and the philosophies and make them your own and spew them to a large audience. We're talking about a man who was banned from several countries because of the things he said. He couldn't travel to Australia. Like, this isn't just like, oh, like, I don't think passes should be given. And I know retroactively it happened a long time ago, but I've spoken to some people in real life, and like, there are people in my real life who just started listening to Tyler Creator at Flower Boy, and it was like, that happened. I was like, yeah, like, that was, yeah. As somebody who listened to Goblin Ambassador when I was in middle school, I was already uncomfortable. I'm like, this feels weird, but also I'm 13. I'm 13, 12, 13. Now, luckily, it didn't shape my worldview, but I can understand how for some white kid hearing a black kid say those things, it becomes acceptable to you. And I think we're not talking about the ramifications of how big he was an artist and how that toxicness influenced parts of the internet culture that still exists today. And I feel like we like, it's too much. Excuse me if I'm wrong, but it feels like we're being like lenient with him.
I don't think anyone's said anything lenient or nice about it, like anything lenient about it. I think I guess maybe I'll say for me, I don't think there's any pass to give Tyler the Creator, because we don't have a pass to give him, because this whole conversation stems from the fact that Tyler the Creator has a majority white fan base. Tyler the Creator curated the kind of fan base where this is okay, which is why he didn't say anything for 10 years and which is why he won't say anything now, because he has more to lose by coming out to come and address. First of all, the minute anybody smell blood in the water, like, you got to think about it like this is a controversy happening, but this is a controversy that has happened before. Like, Tyler the Creator has dealt with new people and new fans finding out this and being mad or whatever. He doesn't care, because the reality is his fan base is mad solely about him critiquing them being anti-black. You know what I mean? That's really their real gripe. That's what his fan base was annoyed by, which is why he didn't say shit on that regard. You know, it was only that liking of the tweet. As far as this other stuff, this is a conversation that we're having, but the majority of the people who are truly going to be offended by what Tyler the Creator said, did, believes, who he may be, are not the people who's listening to his music. So to me, it doesn't even, it's not even like a worthwhile endeavor for me to be like, well, am I okay with it? Because don't matter, I was never the one buying his records, to be honest. You see what I'm saying? As far as, so I guess for me, I come in it from a place of, one, what do we think artists, like black artists? Because what I do believe is real is that he's frustrated with the white fan base that he's curated, and probably because of the way in which they are, in like the way in which they're interacting with like who he is now. But I still think, and I to level out what you were, some of what you were saying, Dom, is that there've been people who, like, most people are like, okay, he's obviously a very different person now, and then there are some people who are like, well, how do we know that? He's never actually said, and he's never denounced any of these things. He's never said anything. We've decided that he has a particular kind of black aesthetic, black sound. He's working with black people, so we decided he's pro-black now, and this has changed. But he's never actually said anything different. And when I think about it, I was thinking about it today when I was like looking at some of the crazy shit he was saying in 2014. He was saying like some of the craziest messages to me were the ones around like Black Lives Matter and race and police brutality and things like that. And he said, I thought about something, one of those horrible tweets versus something he was praised for. He was like, talking about Black history, we're like, why the f do we need a Black History Month? Why the f we want to separate ourselves so bad, yada, yada, yada. And that to me made me think of when he got, I think, his Grammy, and he was upset that his album, he was like best rap album or something. And he was like, he was upset about the fact that their music is automatically, Black people's music is automatically put there as opposed to pop or wherever else. And like that sentiment we enjoyed. People like mostly applauded that. Like, you're right, they do go and put Black people, just all lump them into rap. But I wonder how much the same, like the frustration at the root of that, it like how much that connects to the same kind of frustration that's screaming 15 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, that why the f do we need to have a separate month, you know? So that's kind of me, what I'm thinking, and like where. And to like posit another thing on his brand of anti-Blackness and what you're saying from it, because I think the Edgelord era, what's referred to the Edgelord era, is very popular. Like, so many creators have a former Edgelord thing, and I think what that's rooted in, I see it across races, ages, demographic, where from, and what I think it's actually rooted in is the internet. And who went and found community on the internet. And it's like, I don't know Tyler the Creator personally. I don't know his friend groups. I don't know his school. I don't know his anything to pathologize what or why he didn't feel connected, or did he, or da-da-da-da-da. And obviously this is who had enough friends to form a collective, you know, Odd Future, Wolf Day. He had a collective of other who felt on the outs. So I can't say that he's a loner or somebody. But to me, this seems more akin to a particular like internet, like who get on the internet, like that's what it's speaking to me. Yeah,
that's what it gives me too, because I mean, I'm thinking about it. I mean, obviously I'm not an artist, but most art, like my best friend Duran Bernard, right, great artist, Grammy nominated brother, but also came up via the internet, right? And so like, and obviously he doesn't do this, doesn't chase controversy, but a lot of this is not just based on your talent, it's based upon what you can do with the algorithm. And so artists like Tyler the Creator are literally coming up and they're getting their success via the algorithm. And as we're now aware, We should have been more aware back then. I mean, we had MySpace top 10. Who got your top 10? The people that was the finest or was saying the craziest stuff. Right. And so there was a kind of internet incentive in these first, right. And these artists that are coming out and being able to do their own thing without being signed to major labels where controversy starts, I think, to your point. But to what Dom, the brother, was saying earlier, I'm also not trying to give him a pass, but I'm also just trying to sit also in reality that as like a Black queer person, if I actually held all to the standard that I think that he was just talking about doing with him, I wouldn't have no straight Black friends. I would have to say, fuck all of y'all, because what was you doing in your 20s? What was you saying about gay and gay sex and getting married and all this shit? Not just our 20s, but some of y'all in your late 20s, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, if we're going to keep that energy, keep it. But I'm not invested in Tyler, the Creator. That's not my homie. I don't listen to his music. I don't look at artists as political leaders or thought leaders or anything other than to make my body move, right? So I think that's one of the weird things that we have going on now. It's like, it's important that we're having this conversation, I think, for a lot of reasons. But I also think it's strange that we're looking to Tyler, the Creator, to not us, but, you know, the royal we, to say anything, to matter to any of us. Because what? Who are you, baby? What's the resume?
For the record, I'm not trying to give him a pass either. I just think I might have more willingness to engage with people than normal who cause harm, just because I feel like that's very disruptive to the cycle of causing more harm. I think engaging with those people will lead to that being less likely to happen in the future. And I think as far as Tyler, the Creator goes, it kind of reminds me, because my mama was a crackhead and she cannot take accountability for anything she did during her crack era. She does not know how to have that conversation. That sounds crazy, but it's very like she has so much shame built up in her system that overrides any level of ability that she has to actually sit down with me and say, okay, I did beat your ass over a fork. That was crazy. Like, I shouldn't have done it, but she can't. It's some part of her that can't hold space for two truths at once and recognize she can still be a good person who did a horrible thing. Those two things can be true at once.
Yeah. What do we
it's
think?
Like it takes away from the sobriety.
Yeah. Like, what do we, I guess, I think that's probably like even like a better overarching thing is, because I think what is really at play here is us trying to figure out what must a Black person, like, what must they do or can they do to like atone from previous coonery? You know what I mean? Like anti-Blackness. If you live your life and you espouse these kind of views, like what needs to be done for people to feel like you are sincere or to feel like you can be supported or you're someone who should be in community, I guess.
But to who, Olay, I guess is the underlying question. Like, atone to who?
Exactly.
Like,
it's original, like, you know what I mean?
Like, who's the bill due to?
Literal atonement. It has to be direct in public in the same way that he was willing to be direct in public and causing harm. You need to directly address the things that you did, and it's not to any particular person. If anything, it should be for himself. If he no longer agrees with the things he said in the past, and he no longer wants to regurgitate. And also, I think it's important to note too that the things that he was saying and doing existed far before he decided to say and do them on his little album. Like those things already pre-existed. He did not come up with those things. These aren't new things.
So he was a part of a larger Edgelord race.
Yeah.
Exactly. He needs to acknowledge that he regurgitated those things, that anti-Blackness, that misogyny, the horrible things that he said as it relates to what he would do to a pregnant woman. And say you don't mean that shit, one, and you will never do that again.
I guess, like, okay, and I think that public it has some cachet, I guess, but I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to think about who's the pregnant woman that was pregnant years ago that was hurt by Tyler, the Creator, that wants this apology, and that was going to feel a light or lifted. You know what I mean? Because I feel like pregnancy real stressful. I ain't never can't get pregnant. You know what I mean? But it's supposed to be the most dangerous thing a woman could ever go through, right? Are you really thinking about Tyler, the Creator? And not to pick on what you say, Jay, but I guess that like so much of this always just feels so like performative that like Tyler's apologized. He's had a breakthrough. He's went to therapy. He's not anti-Black no more. And he makes it, no, I'm just saying in the future, right? All this happens. And now he's a new pro-Black person and he makes a statement, gives an Obama speech on race. Like who's breathing a sigh of relief, right? Like, who is this real, like, who is this ritual for? I guess is what concerns me. I can get that, like, it can be something to stanch and disavow the bleeding of the afterlives of former things you've affirmed, but I don't know the people, like the real, to your point, Olay, the off the internet people that are like, damn, Tyler apologized, and now I can go to work.
Like,
You know,
like I needed that from Tyler.
I don't necessarily think that it has to be about, like, you know, other people. So I think this is going to get into, like, this is going to get me into back into my organizing bag real quick, because
dig up in
as like
there.
somebody who is like a harm reductionist and who genuinely believes in transformative and restorative justice, I do think that a lot of that is about community, right? It is about who you are in community with, who is holding you, who is making sure that you are able to move through whatever that process looks like, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that there's also something to say about the sort of public atonement that Jay is talking about. When you are doing something, when you have done something violent and have been as violent as Tyler the Creator has been publicly, that I think is very important. And I don't think that it necessarily is about the everyday person so much as it is about your showing to your fans and to just, I guess, the general public, that there is a commitment to honoring and recognizing the fact that what you said, what you've done has been harmful in various ways, and that you are committed to moving beyond that. I think that is just as important.
You're right, but I think what happened was that No Name spoiled us, and I think let me explain what I mean by that.
I love No Name. Shout out to
All
No
right,
Name.
No Name spoiled us, right? The truth of the matter is, the real truth is, celebrities, public figures, anybody does not apologize or take accountability or do any of that unless there is as a general means, that No Name is the exception. No Name is the exception to the rule, unless it will hurt their career or bottom line or them in financially in some way. Tyler the Creator genuinely has more to lose by speaking than not speaking. Because what will happen is, the reality is, we live in an outrage economy. Every week, guaranteed, we have to be. That's how social media, the shows, YouTube, the algorithms, everything functions by outrage. Someone has to get their licks. And if there's nothing truly salacious, we'll find someone to get their licks. Tyler the Creator, this is happening right now. Think about the depths of our outrage economy. I think about the shit that's actually happened in the United States right now. Tyler the Creator didn't even speak. Nothing new happened. He clicked like on a tweet, and we're not even arguing about that now. These tweets, he's talking about tweets from 10 to 15 years ago. So that's like how the outrage economy works. It will absolutely move on. But if he speaks, if he addresses it, now he's not even addressing his fans. He's addressing the Black community, who is not necessarily his purchasing consumer community or what hurts his fan base or whatever. Now he has like something solidified, and he's never going to say it. He's not going to answer it right. Anything he says, I guarantee you, whatever approach Tyler the Creator would take to how he would address these tweets or whatever have you in his previous positions and stuff, it ain't going over, baby. It's going to be, now we're going to have 3 weeks of what was going to be a week's lashings. So No Name, I think No Name is the rare example of somebody who said something and was educated, like, oh, no, that's not it at all. And just because of their own viewpoints and their own enlightenment and their own radicalization moment, was like, yeah, to what Deshaun said, I'm holding myself accountable. I actually see what y'all was saying. I read this. I'm going to make a whole switch. But as a general, no one else says sorry to us because they're sorry. They say it because they must. They must proceed. Even the most organic of genuine or whatever, it's because you feel like you must. So I don't think, Tyler, that's the truth. It's like, I think you're right, Deshaun. I think you're absolutely right. But I think I don't think we actually exist in that world. I think like the No Names and a certain level of internet and being able to like get people like they're in trouble. If enough of their audience is mad about something, they'll do something, like when Keke Palmer pulled down her Jonathan Majors interview. You know what I mean? But like, what else? You know what I mean? Like, they're real, Jay.
Yeah.
That came up for me too when I was thinking about this, because all what you're describing right now is just the structural analysis that needs to happen for these things to change. Like, why is it that people don't feel comfortable, or even like, what's missing in here that you don't feel a responsibility to atone for these mistakes? If you recognize them as mistakes, what cognitive dissonance is happening that you can't just sit here and say, okay, you know what, I messed up. I messed up really badly. And even for Keke Palmer, I was thinking about like,
Mhm.
there's a certain level of like, I didn't have a problem with her having Jonathan Majors on her podcast at all. It was the fact that I have seen Keke Palmer before not be willing to explore things as deeply as they need to be explored if you're going to platform an abuser. If you're going to do that, because I believe abusers can, I believe in transformation, and I believe that a person can change and that they can, you know, be very willing to grow and also acknowledge the things that they've done to other people. But I also recognize if you're gonna sit across from Keke Palmer who wants to joke and play all day, then this is not the platform for you to actually do that here.
Mhm.
She's not gonna go to the depths that she needs to. And I think as it relates to Tyler, the creator, he just is too much shame in there, and you can see that in all of his discography. If you go and you look back at his music, it's very exemplary of what already pre-existed in our society. He's just showcasing hatred, and hatred that was very realistically something that he would be experiencing internally. Even the way that he went about his music at the time was like he was speaking to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. That was a part of his, I think it was like Dr. T or something like that. Like he was talking to someone about the feelings that he was experiencing. So for him to have that, like, you know, that understanding of himself, but also recognize, ooh, this is I'm thinking some up shit and I'm regurgitating it. And also it's a shock value involved in this. And this is why it's so cool that Dr. Wilson mentioned, you know, the monetization aspect of things. Now you're getting paid for the shock value. Now it's even more beneficial for you to regurgitate this really, really messed up, I'm sorry for cussing, shit repeatedly. And people are eating it up. So I don't know. I want him to apologize, not because he owes me one. You know, I wasn't pregnant in 2014. I wasn't, but I think what he did, the things that he said were really messed up, and he does owe his community an apology if he expects to continue to benefit from us. Because the only people I know with a vinyl of his music in their house are Black.
Yeah.
You know what?
I don't know, I'm struggling.
You are right. I think Marquise and my friend Neil.
I got one of his albums in there right now.
Yeah, I think we're
I'm
underrepresenting
struggling
how
with
black Tyler's fan base has become. Like we're underrepresenting that. Like we talk about this as all white people. Like there is tons of black. When he had his show, he did the Leo. It's not called Leo. It's not called Leo. He did the arena here in Philly. Everybody I follow on Instagram was there, and I follow I'm Black. I follow all Black people. Like this is a small sample size from what I see, but like that I think that is indicative of how the fan base has shifted than it was in 2014. I also do think that
I will say we should. I'm going to guess though that your own timeline, friend list, and community is probably majority Black too. So you're going to see a majority, the fans, the Tyler the Creator's fans that you're going to see are Black. I'm so sure it's a sea of white people out there jumping.
No, for sure. I'm not. I think it has to be said that to be a mainstream rapper that sells as much as he has, your fan base will be majority white. That is how popular rapper work. That's every popular rapper ever. Like that's how it works. But I do think that like the albums, the music itself has become more representative of Black culture. Like he had a DJ Drama hosted mixtape a few years ago. Like the last album is like 80s inspired dance music. Like now you're using, before you weren't using things that were like inherently hip hop, inherently Black culture, but now you are, and you still haven't atoned for those things. Like and
I think that's the true heart of what like people don't want to have the critique when everyone's honing in on Tyler the Creator. Right? Like, we're going to hone in on Tyler the Creator. We're going to hone on what's wrong with Tyler the Creator and Tyler the Creator's background and all this, blah, blah, blah. But Tyler the Creator, when I'm looking at a lot of Tyler the Creator's tweets and all of the things that are offensive, that we're angry about, that are offensive, that's indicative of a bunch of rappers. When we're talking about, him in the talking about the pregnant woman or whatever in his music, I know all the lyrics to Dead Wrong by the Notorious B.I.G. and he talking about raping the daughter and the son. Okay, babes. I like, you know what I mean? Like when I see him talking about Black Lives Matter and saying, why we want to separate ourselves, I'm thinking about all of Lil Wayne's comments around the exact same time. Full-blooded Louisiana saying the same shit. I even remember Kendrick that we love saying like, oh, we ain't focused on black crime. He was in a sea of his peers of even that like we like and have never done the same thing. So it's funny because like on one hand, it's like, oh, this so divorced from culture or whatever. Look at him on this boat. And I do think there is an element of that. I do think the internet, and I think internet culture has a lot to do with it, what Anansi and I were talking about. But I also think there is a significant part of hip hop culture and rap culture or whatever that is engaged. Like I actually felt like I couldn't defend him on the grounds of being like, this nigga ain't cultured, because I was like, this actually looking a little cultured when I saw the lyrics about the pregnant women. I said, you learn from your forefathers. You listen to Biggie. Me too. I heard it. I know.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I remember. You know what I mean? It's like these. I actually think he's in a sea of. And if I even think of like the era and the world of trolling, I actually, you know, at risk of Dom starting to talk about my age again, I want to be like, I think what I really should have is someone explain to us, what is trolling really? Because, you know, like there's so much of things be like they were trolling, they write off of trolling. And I'm like, I might not understand the art of trolling. Like, is it satire? Are you like, what is trolling at its core? So because I was looking at his trolling by like Chris Brown and stuff like that, and I'm like, does he mean it? Because this was Bessie, was Frank Ocean and shit. And I remember Frank Ocean swinging on Chris Brown and shit at the time. I remember these kinds of things happening at the same time. So I'm like, what's real? What's not? What is trolling, Dom?
So trolling in essence is rage bait. To rage bait somebody is to get you out your body on purpose. Like I'm purposely saying this thing to get a reaction out of you. It's shock jock. It's the same way like that, like the whole Austin comedy scene. They get up on stage and they say racist things because it's shocking. Like they're attempting to rage bait. That's the whole point of it. That's all rage bait is trolling. Like that's what it is.
And thank you for giving me that definition. So I think that's what actually, to me, I'm like, it's that I don't even think it's hard to even to decide what is sincere. Like, what was sincere? What did you believe? What did you think? And so it doesn't become to me about like that and Tyler the Creator, like apologizing, more so explaining. Like, explain to me the thought process on how this comes to be. How do you think this fits into, like, where are you now? Because I'm like, I don't want you to apologize. I don't get you. I want you to explain it to me. Explain then, explain now, explain the bridge.
I'm a little lost. Sorry, I'm just a little lost because I mean, like, just going way back to kind of Jay's point when she was talking about, you know, the inability, right, of people that have done something in the past and maybe are somebody different today. We're talking about our mothers addicted to drugs, right, and that inability to reckon with the harm and the violence that was done under the influence, because that undoes, right, what's happening right now with you being clean and sober. So I think maybe there's something like that happens with Tyler, but I also think on the other hand, to Olay's point, right, like this is actually the most kind era of rap and hip hop that has ever existed. Like the most disgusting, racist, terrible, sexist, homophobic, violent things that we hear today have nothing on the 90s. Have nothing like even on the 80s, like for real. Like when I look at the rap beefs that happen, people get canceled, even going all the way to like Nicki and other crazy folk, like you ain't doing what Tupac was talking about, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like, I don't know, do we have a type of amnesia, or is it that we've raised a type of maybe moral standard, a moral floor, or is it that we need a different performance of discipline? Right. So I think in one ways we want to say, I think in our kind of higher minds, and I think in the work that Deshaun does, we think about, you know, abolition and transformative justice, is that, you know, you harm someone, you harm the community, take accountability for that, and then we can move forward because you're acknowledging, and there's power in the acknowledgement. But on the other hand, I think there's a large segment of society that actually enjoys the disciplining of that person in public. Right. There's this thing where we really enjoy the theater of violence, and we say we're doing that because you did something harmful. Now we get to enact harm upon you. Regardless, we don't actually care if your mind has changed. We care that you acknowledge us, because in your acknowledgement, you give us the consent to violate you in particular types of ways. And I think what's also really sick about this situation is, and Olay, you hinted at this in the beginning, and I know you're probably going to bring us back to it later, but this idea that it's Tyler's implicit critique of his white fans that now leads to a kind of disciplining from allegedly his black fans is a very interesting thing that we've seen happen over time and space. I don't think it's intentional to us, but I think it's really interesting that crossing white people can lead to this kind of type of communal violence against someone black and say, look, he doesn't even like you, right? Like what? And how was the algorithm playing with race and time and space? And that's just all really strange. So I'm just thinking about all these performances of care, which are really rituals of violence. And like, I don't know this. So like the idea that a lot of us don't know him, never mess with him is very strange. And then the last point I made, because I know that Deshaun was going to say something, but I think it's really interesting too, when we're saying that like how black he is right now, or I'm sorry, how black his fan base is right now. Like if I took a Tyler, the Creator album, any album, and I brought it to my mom and it was cookout, people were like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? You can't say that about Kendrick. You can't even say that about that little light skinned conscious rapper, the Kendrick's nemesis, right? Like he could be played
Kendrick's
anywhere,
Nemesis is hilarious.
right?
Nemesis.
But for real, right? Like both of them, Drake and the other one. But I mean, like you can play them in any black space, and it's going to be at least a vibe. People are not necessarily going to dance, but they're going to bop their head to. If you play Tyler the Creator in that same way, and I just say that to say that, like, even though they've said these racist and sexist things, they've paid a certain type of cultural performance to the community. Whereas there's a type of debt leisure and there's a pleasure leisure. And I think that with Tyler, there's a deficit in the pleasure leisure. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at, is that you ain't loved us enough to hurt us like this. In public,
So
at least.
I think, and so that actually, the last point that you just made is actually my biggest issue with
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing, because what I think it does is it inherently strips Blackness of its multitudes, right? And what I mean by that is that there is a long history of Black folks existing in this sort of grunge all
Mm-hmm.
space that Tyler the Creator came up in. It's the reason why he was creating the music that he was creating, because Black folks went through a lot of anti-Blackness to exist in those spaces. Now, I don't know if I would necessarily say that that's something that should have been done, but it's music that our folks have, like found home in.
Yeah.
And I use that word home very loosely. And so to me, what I'm thinking is like, yeah, you can't bring his music to like my nana house, because she ain't gonna know who that is. But some of my friends who exist in this sort of grunge alt space are gonna bop to that album, all albums,
Mm-hmm.
because they know exactly who he is, and then will
Mm-hmm.
also give you the lineage of the Black creators that came before him, creating the same types of music. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, it's like, it's not that you haven't loved us enough to hurt us in this way. It is that, in fact, you are aware, I think acutely aware, of the ways that Black folks have been able to create in and under these conditions, and still made the active decision to perform in the ways that you have. And that, for me, takes it from this sort of like unintentional or
Mm-hmm.
indirect harm, and moves it to this very intentional, very direct harm, because you knew exactly what you were doing and why, and you performed in a particular way because you knew that it could be monetized, and
Mm-hmm.
beyond being monetized, you knew that it could entertain. And I think that like that becomes the larger critique for me, is that the ways that we have sort of commercialized this sound, this
Mm-hmm.
music, this creativity, has allowed for people to perform in particular ways that they know will be entertaining and therefore will lead to a bag. But with Tyler the Creator in particular, for me, it's like, it's not so much about me needing an apology from him, right? Like, I don't, like all y'all have said, I don't know this. I don't really care to know this. I've never been a fan of any of his antics, like in public. I'm like, he, don't get me wrong, he's made some bops. There's some
Mm-hmm.
songs that I really enjoy,
I love his
but I'm
little that
also
guy
like,
freestyle. That's so hot.
look,
Put platinum in my house.
look, I done heard some good music from him, but I'm also like, I'm not a huge fan of his. But for me, it's like, as somebody who has worked with mothers who have lost their kids to police violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that for me in particular is like, I don't know that some of these mothers care to have an apology from Tyler, right? I don't know that they even know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
But like, knowing the tweets that he made around the time of Mike Brown's murder, knowing the type of tweets that he was making around the murder of Trayvon Martin, right? Like, yes, there are plenty of rappers like Lil Wayne, like ASAP Rocky, etc., who have made very similar comments about Black Lives Matter movement,
Mm-hmm.
about Black kids being murdered by police, about Black kids being murdered by white vigilantes. Like, that's all very true. Um, and I think that they all owe those parents an apology, right? I think that like they all owe not Black folks as a movement or as a people, but like acknowledging the fact that these were mothers who were mourning the murders of their children very publicly, who were not only having to deal with the very direct harm from their cities, their city councils, their mayors, their governors, the police forces in their cities, but then also had to take on the weight of what it meant to experience scrutiny from celebrities and the amount of scrutiny that then came from their fans. And Tyler, the creator, I keep wanting to say Tyler Perry. Tyler, the creator, created a specific space that I think emboldened his white fans to engage Black folks in a very particular way, especially in this era that existed on the shoulders of this, like I said in the beginning, this already established 4chan edgelord culture that was deeply violent towards Black folks.
Okay.
And so for me, it's like, if there is an apology, if there is an atonement, it is for that reason, because you have to acknowledge the fact that you have been creating Black music, what I understand to be Black music, and you have created Black music with an established Black fan base from the very beginning. There are a lot of Black folks who were fans of his from the very beginning, and you were producing this sort of content and adding to this sort of culture that not only harmed Black folks writ large, but also directly harmed these mothers who were mourning the losses of their children in real time in a very public way.
I agree. I agree completely. And I guess to build on that is he now allowed? He is responsible for the reason why he emboldened these people. He created the audience that he has. Is he now allowed to rein them in? Is he now allowed to critique them, to give them new rules of conduct? Because it feels like that's what, not even overtly trying to do. I think it actually maybe he should have been, and maybe this is a conversation now. I'll say he might as well overtly do it, and he probably won't now because he liked one little tweet of somebody else trying to say something and not getting his ass kicked in. But I'm like, to what Anansi was saying, Tyler tries to reprimand his white fan base for their racism, right? Like, regardless, like, okay, it's like, we're here now. We know he walked them here. He helped embolden them. He got this fan base. But now he's here and he's seeing them clearly. He's seeing the racism. He's frustrated with it. But in trying to reprimand them, they basically sick to on him. Like, hey, actually, you can't reprimand, you know what I mean? And then the conversation is shifted to like, okay, well, you're responsible for it. You did it. You're bad. You're cool. And it's like, that's true. But now, like, we have this problem. Like, is he now allowed? What becomes his responsibility from here? Because to me, I feel like I don't know. It's, where it's like this about how answerable Tyler the Creator is to us and is to Black people, but his fans are at the very least, and white people are answerable to him. Like, what happens when them? Like, and it makes me think. I saw this video today. I'm gonna let y'all hear it on Threads. Like, who cares about the Threads drama? But just for background, on Threads right now, they're kicking a Black woman named Lovey, Black creator named Lovey, and some other people's back in or whatever. Right? Let me let you hear what this guy had to say.
Lovey, Luvie or something like that.
Luvie, yeah.
They getting her again.
Oh, they've been hitting up for 3 days, child. Yeah. She brought Brandy. She went to Brandy's concert. Brandy left early, like didn't perform like the last of many songs. She went and made a thing about it on social media. And in kicking her back in for that, like in defense of Brandy, they dug up every mother thing her ass ever said in the last umpteen years, and now they dragging her to and fro. Because
I feel like they've been her ass before.
Hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray. Ultimately, y'all were getting played. Let me show you how. Look at this. You're trying to tell me that the main topic that we need to be talking about right now is if Lovey is anti-Black from some 2012 tweets. Why is this the #1 trending topic on my timeline? Y'all, we are being algorithmed. This is not the main fighting line for what is anti-Black. This entire administration is anti-Black. The fact that the government is shut down and that's disproportionately impacting Black people is anti-Black. The fact that voting rights are on the line, that's anti-Black. All of what's going on is anti-Black. Shoot, the fact that 97% of Black folks spending money. So, also, what are you trying to say? I feel like this is a much smaller version of something. It's like you want to address these white people. Like it started with this white audience being outright racist, and that like quickly became forget them. You know what I mean? Because did it, and I think and there is space to have the did it conversation. Like, let's point that out. Like, stop acting confused, because I heard a lot of people make that good point. Is their frustration is just that Tyler keeps acting like he don't know where these racist white people came from, and I think that's one thing. But like, is he allowed now? Can he now say, like, can he now reprimand the white people that he emboldened? Can he do that?
Yeah, yes, I think the answer is yes. And like, I want y'all to speak. Sorry. I think that the answer is yes. And I think that he has a responsibility to. And obviously, right, like, you are going to have who want to kick your back in no matter what you say, because I think it was Anasi who said this, like, there is this culture, especially this sort of like post 2010s culture, wherein people are like, you know, everything, you can't sort of acknowledge your harms or wrongdoings in public, because there is a sort of economy around people wanting to kick your back in if you do such a thing, right? So like, I recognize that, and I also recognize that Olay, I think you're right. No Name really spoiled us. Like, she really, like, I love No Name. That's the homie. But I'm also like, I want this to be the standard, and obviously I don't expect that from celebrities. Like, you know, celebrities are celebrities for a reason. They're part of the establishment. They're part of like a class that is not our own, and I recognize that. And I'm also like, yes, you should reprimand your white fans. You should be inviting your white fans into this sort of newly established understanding of the world that you have, that would at the very least make clear to them that their Lord, their Savior, is not in support of the things that they have done in his name over the past decade or more, right? Like, that to me feels like the bare minimum.
The gag is that it would hurt his career. Like, it would hurt him.
It would,
like,
and it should.
It would hurt him. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm only I'm not saying right, wrong, what one should do. I'm only saying like what the particulars are and why don't be inclined to do it. Because I think of like a YouTube creator that I know, IDubbz. Like, IDubbz used to Edgelord era, came up in the Edgelord era of YouTube, saying all kind of racist wild shit. IDubbz, like Ian, that's his real name. Ian wakes up one day like, oh no, this is terrible. He's like, he met some of his fans out in the world, heard what I was saying, moving, got a wife, thought I was talking about him, was like, oh no, I did wrong. Puts out a video like, I was wrong. I did this. I cultivated a base of harm. I see this. It's da on his own, unprovoked. This is what I'm doing. When I tell you those white boys mad to this day, foaming at the mouth on a culture of harassment. And also, like, that's another thing we don't think about, how like crazy the kind of white people that you embolden, that the edgelords embolden. Like, these ain't regular white people. These are unhinged white people. The way they carry on when they feel like they're getting checked by their kings, they revolt. You know what I mean? I'm like, they were more. That's why, again, where he said all that wild shit about openly. The critique about his fans was someone else's. Just click like. He not bold enough to talk about them, to like address them for real. I'm surprised he didn't come out yet and tell us he was hacked. Like, that was an assistant that missing click like on that tweet.
Yeah, I just go ahead, Jerry.
I could speak to this more personally because I feel there are levels to edgelording. Yes. And when I first started making any type of content on the internet, I did not realize that the people I was making content with, because I was working with a lot of men, and those men were utilizing a lot of the women in their videos as props, to the degree that I would be asked to come dressed with a low cut revealing top. Otherwise, I'm not going to be in the video. It's either you show up with the titties or you can stay your ass at home. It was that type of thing. And I didn't realize the type of like audience that I was building from being a part of that content. And that eventually, when I started making my own content, the men felt duped. They're like, bitch, you gay? And you support who gay? And you got a who gay on your channel? You raggedy bitch. They were pissed. Mm-hmm. They were in my comments going crazy. They watched an interview where I was with another guy who I had done content with in the past, who had built a following of really angry men. And he started asking me questions about how I felt about all of these different things. Mm-hmm. And they like, this bitch is crazy. She's talking about she understand why trans people exist. This bitch is nuts. I'm sorry. If you gonna like my content, then you just gonna have to get used to it. And yeah, I lost subscribers in the probably tens of thousands. I'd rather do that and make it very clear what side of the line I stand on than sit here and be like, no, I'ma just do what y'all like. I'ma have say pause in my videos. I'm not. That's never gonna be, you know. And I think Tyler, the creator, he got very used to benefiting monetarily from this edgelording dynamic, to the degree that now he don't want to suffer financially if he makes it very clear what side of the line he stands on. And that's unfortunate because in the last few years, he's made some bops. He's made some albums that we actually rock with. So now you got this newly, and I won't even say new because Black people have always supported Tyler, the Creator's work. But now you have a different subset of individuals that would never have meshed well with Goblin or Bastard or any of your previous work. Like that was never really their thing. Now they're listening to, you know, the Flower Boy and having a good time, and they realize you're an idiot. And that's not, they don't want to vibe with an idiot. So, and a racist, you know, it's a lot of things, but that's my opinion on it. I think Tyler, the Creator, just doesn't want to lose financially.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on. I think that like one thing we have to deal with, and I think in the Black community, is the rope-a-dope that I think Olay was bringing up. But it is the rope-a-dope of like white people feel offended. They end up rope-a-doping into disciplining other right, for the shit that a lot of is probably doing in their household. And then it becomes this cycle and we become the sideshow about how uncivilized we are and how we dragging each other, yada, yada, yada. But I think it also is like this other thing that happens, not just the kind of mea culpa of like, oh, I did wrong. Now let me, you know, be, you know, cannibalized. But I think that something happens too when you have these like Black celebrities or leaders or whatever that have been traditionally seen as, or at least popular amongst a lot of white people, who then say something to them and their Blackness gets called into question in particular types of ways. I'm thinking about Colin Powell, right? Not just endorsing Obama, but then coming out and talking about Trump. And then, you know, he's like, oh, is he really a great general? Yada, yada, yada. I think about Kamala Harris saying like, you know, part of 2025 is racist. And like, wait, did she just turn Black? And everyone was talking about whether Jamaican people are Black. And is she Black because her mama Indian? And like, she became not Project 2025, right? So it's like this thing I feel like always happens. We can even go back to the Black Panther Party and thinking about what people's actual nationality was and trying to discredit them via the FBI and CIA. So like this has been like a, I don't know, 100, maybe 200 year program that I think we really need to kind of think about. But I think what is really interesting, Dom's not here right now, but he was talking earlier, Olay was asking about trolling. And I think that that's one narrative, but I think we also need to think about trolling as coming from like playing the dozens, right? As something that was actually happening on the plantation as a way, not just to kind of let off steam for things you couldn't say about the master, but also kind of let out steam about internalized anti-Blackness and to kind of breathe that out. And then how it kind of translates into our modern times with us kind of teasing each other, even with like hip hop, right? Hip hop becomes about saying the most controversial things in a freestyle battle, right? It's not about things that necessarily make sense, things you necessarily believe, but it's about like, how can I get like this shock factor? And the shock factor oftentimes comes about harm or hitting below the belt, or when it's just all Black people, right? Saying some of the most crazy anti-Black stuff about people's nose and hairstyles and whatever. And so like, if we like take that evolution as something that's always been about part of Black culture, what does that mean? And then we think about this trolling thing that's happening online, and you see these young Black men, particularly growing up, you know, that are my age in the early 2010s, early 2000s. Like this is their first time with social media having the ability to actually say what they believe without consequences, right? There was no moderation in that time. So a lot of these young people, are getting their first taste of what they believe is free speech, what they believe is individualism. And in our politics at that time, we're still having post late 90s attacks on critical race theory and then the election cycle. That was kind of like we're in Groundhog Day. But so they're doing this. They're getting their idea of being individuals. They're being praised for being free-thinking Black men. They're getting to feel like they're untethered by the anti-Black stereotypes that they probably already embodied, but at least other new people aren't thinking that. But then when they come and they switch and they make this apology, not only are they finding out that free speech isn't free, right? And it's actually about government restrictions on you, not the community responding to what you say. They're also realizing that in disavowing that, they're indicting every other person that agreed with what they said. So it's not just that like you apologize and there's like this kind of catharsis that happens, but if you've built this kind of rage history, you've been playing on the kind of fringes of things, the people that believe that and are still with you, or maybe aren't even still with you, but did believe that and were a fan of it at that time, you're not just saying you were wrong. You're saying there's something inherently wrong with them and perhaps the ways in which they still believe. And so that violence has to be returned. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with Tyler here, is that it's not just, okay, Black people, whatever, but everyone, and I think to your point too, Jay, the experience you had, everyone that was down with you at that moment is now saying, wait a minute, not only did you fool me, right? Not only did you do that, but now you're saying I'm a bad person. If you think you're a bad person and I laughed and I loved it, or I was turned on by what you was wearing, right, then that means I'm an even worse person because I'm gratuitously, right, taking this in and also also incentivizing it in a way. And then the last part about that too is that like, what does this mean going forward? Who do those people get to be, and how do they let go of that violence, right? And who are you, first of all, little Negro, to discipline white folks? And I think that kind of internalized racial play comes up in there, because now you've disentangled someone's whole sense of value making of themselves and the authority that they have to gain pleasure from violence that they put out into the world. And this is all happening in your little tweet. And I think that's a lot psychologically for people that are living with structural privilege in whatever space they're in, right? To actually have to sit with.
Yeah, because what his white fan base is telling him, and I'm sure he knows, which is why he's not speaking on these things, is that you are not their thought leader. You are their token Black person that gave them permission to say these things, right?
You're the
Because
mascot.
I when I think of the comments that I would got, like I did a video one time with IDubbz, like Ian, talking about like him basically explaining to him like why so many things were problematic and him apologizing for things and whatnot. And so much of, and when I tell you these white people were losing their mind to this day, I could click on held comments for review and they're screaming like. Then what would they, with the thing that they scream the most, like why they're so angry, why they hate him so much, like why is it bothering you so much that he doesn't want to be at Edgelord and say these things anymore? It's because what they'll say is, he never said anything wrong. He shouldn't apologize. He didn't do anything wrong, because he was their permission to think that these were okay and to do it. And so what they're like, they're fighting with is the merit. It's like, while we might look at it like we could like, oh, trolling. And I could believe that he was trolling, that this thing was rage bait. And maybe there's a level to like that he never believed it, but it was meant for rage bait. But nonetheless, for them, this was always a world review that they agreed with. Why do Black people have Black History Month? Why do Black people riot and break up the place? That is what they think. They think those things and they still think those things.
But that punishment shows up because all of these individuals, at least I can only speak for my opinion, I think it's a lot of people who are in shame bonds for many different reasons. And I think shame is leading people to either want to punish because they feel like that's an affront to them. You know, you used to do the same thing that I did. Why you think you're better than me now? You think you bigger than the program because now you got a wife and you like it's people who are mad at his comments for that reason and that reason alone, because he shows them a different version of them that they could be if they let go of all of the things that are holding them back from who they could be, if they stop being a weirdo. That's the best way.
I think that's the most generous reading, though, because I agree with you that there are some people like that, and maybe the best among them are like that. But I think for me, in reality, this is about theft. This is about you, little mascot that we've empowered and made rich or made famous, what have you, in service of our own ability to oppress and be violent in public and say what we want to say, thinking you have the power to take what is rightfully ours, which is the power and the privilege to cause pain and get joy from it, right? And even you disavowing this is an affront, not because you can actually pull off the heist of stealing our power, but because you are uppity enough to think that you can. Uppity enough that you think that you have a claim to it at all. Go back to your place, right? And so I think a lot of these people are not even thinking like, oh, I'm shameful, or I wish I could be a better person, or look at this person's doing for me. I think it is... But I think it is the reality that there's an attempt to claw back the power to dominate. And I think it's as simple as like that. And I think really that's just the basis of America, right? And its plantation and colonial genocide against Native Americans and Black people. But I think ongoingness, right? That's really the definition and the defining terms of whiteness. And in the color line that exists in the United States is the power to dominate and to do so without having a type of logic or permission.
Where do you think that stems from?
I mean, I think that's just whiteness, right? I think that's whiteness and anti-Blackness and the basis of the afterlives of slavery.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting how right you are and how simple it really is. Because when you think of Tyler the Creator, there are certain celebrities and people that you know being men in general, like when men decide who they want to be celebrating, like what masculinity, what they're into, men love a man. Like I've seen men who love Donald Trump, Black men who know Donald Trump hates them saying this or whatever, because they get off, or they aspire to be men who can say whatever they want. They love the idea of a man who cannot be checked. They love that. They don't matter what it comes in. They love a man who can't be checked. And to me, Tyler the Creator is one of those, right? Like it is a part of his brand and why he's liked, this idea that you can't check him. He could say whatever, he could do whatever. So I think it's funny that every single time that I thought about Tyler the Creator has managed to be getting critiqued on a wide scale, it's now this. And when y'all probably don't even know, there's this little white boy rapper named Ian that was gaining popularity for I know you know, for like 2
I read
seconds
about it earlier
last
though.
year. Yeah, you said I read it.
I read it in Rolling
like
Stone 5 minutes before this.
Tyler the Creator did like an interview and he was so frustrated at like this white, like, why is this popular? Like this white guy cosplaying, like whatever, and doing rap, and he was pissed about it. And he said that. And when I tell you they was and it says to me, it's like, oh, it makes it so clear what you are and what you're allowed to speak on and the level of tokenization it is, because Tyler Creator could say whatever the as long as he's not talking about white people. Don't talk about Taylor Swift. Don't talk about Ian. Don't talk about your white fans. Don't whatever. Like he could say all this other wild shit, but not this stuff. And so that to me just speaks to y'all's points.
Yeah. I think that like what Tyler the Creator does in general, but I think what this in particular is doing is like bringing to the forefront what happens across various like subgenres and subcultures. Like, and I think that what people are gagging over to me is like just not gag worthy, because I look at and am in like different subcultures and subgenres. So like what I mean by that is there's a reason why battle rap is not mainstream. There's a reason why the ball scene is not mainstream.
Talk about
right?
it.
Like there's a reason why like these spaces and it's also there's a reason why people gag at some things that like they'll hear being said in the ball scene, or they'll gag at what they hear people saying in like battle rap, because we're not generally familiar with what's happening or what's being said in these spaces. And I think like, so to me it's just like I'm not gagging because girl, like these are very normal, but it's normal for like the spaces. And we are living in a very different moment, a very different time than where we were culturally when Tyler the Creator first came out. Like they're like those sort of things, the sort of things that he was able to say were not necessarily like mainstream, but they were not as subculture as they are now. And I think that like he is showing people who perhaps were not aware, which for me is like, it makes sense. If you're an everyday person who just simply is not like paying attention to or a part of or researching like these various subgroups or subgenres or whatever, you just don't know. I think he's making a lot of people aware of how so many folks do exist amongst each other, how so many people are building community around these very like anti-culture, anti-black, very violent sort of like ideas and ideologies, and he's bringing that to the forefront. And so for me it's like I don't like I hear the critiques of that folks are offering, and I'm also just kind of like, unless and until it takes us further, like unless we're willing to go further and say like, okay, this is what has to happen next, or this is what this should look like, or like unless something else is coming from that, for me it's just it just kind of falls flat, because it's like, okay, like Tyler the Creator is not the only person who is doing these things, and he's not the first and won't be the last. So like what then do we do to sort of like push this forward beyond having like a week-long discourse about it that people would then move on from
What
and
if he's
not
not
care about
sorry?
next week?
Like, what if he's not sorry? You know what I mean? What he really not sorry? And we over here pushing for an apology. Like, I mean, like, and not even like the not sorry, like all y'all, I'm not sorry. But maybe like in a Maya Angelou, I'm not sorry that I was a pimp when I was in my 20s. Right? It built into who I am today. That's how you got I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. And I'm not excusing anyone's harm, but I think that's also a kind of way that like I am not sorry that it's also been discovered that I've had all these versions and elements of me that might still be in the continuum, right? I don't know, because maybe you're not. Maybe you're not sorry to the Black mothers that could have been hurt if they would have heard it. right? Maybe they didn't hear the tweet, so you're not sorry. So I just wonder, like, because we've talked about the performance of this already, but and Deshaun is getting us to the point of like, okay, so now what? Like, what are we hoping to get out of this beyond the kind of compelled speech that this almost is right now? But I really want us to think about, like, not just with him, but with everyone else, and we kind of push everyone to apologize or release a statement. What if they're actually not sorry? Like, have we short-circuited this kind of restorative justice project at all? Right? Like, are we now disabling the kind of long-term marination that it takes actually for growth? And like, what is our investment in the apology? Right? Like, so I don't know, because maybe the nigga not sorry. Maybe he's sorry y'all found out. And I think that's real, because those of us that are like in our 30s, right? Like, we grew up online and we all got the warnings from our teachers in school that like, hey, don't post stuff on Facebook. It's going to make you lose a job one day. And then we started saying that, at least I did, a lot of us did, that like, well, everyone's business is going to be on there. And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Like the
Every mistake is there.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I feel like the apology thing is very top down. And what I feel like is often missed in these conversations, we it's never like bottom up. How did we get here? But what happened before he became this person? Like, I want to understand. And honestly, I feel like his music is the best way to truly understand that, which is why I feel like it's important to, even if it's something that has caused harm and is not helpful in the grand scheme of things, it's really, really valuable information to understand how Black boys become that type of man. Like, I just think it's important information to assess. And I think that if we started to do that deeper analysis and go to the before, as opposed to focusing on the apology, it would be less likely to happen in the future. And you're right, Deshaun, how is it pronounced, to make sure I'm saying? Deshaun.
I was going to ask too.
Deshaun is right. I appreciate that.
You're right, Deshaun, that at the end of the day, there are going to be more people who do these things, but I want to understand why. So when I see that person doing it, I'd be like, okay, I'm clocking it, and I'm a watch, and I'm a wait, and I'm gonna see what happens with you. But for that other person that I did not understand, at least now I know how they got there. And it's not always going to be the same, but I think if we kind of deconstruct it at least, like, what's the root?
And abolitionist framework. And I like that you really introduced that. Oh, God.
And I want to know, because I might know.
No, but I think we know. Like, I think this is all very clear. I think it's the most simple thing in the world, and we try to get all the kind of like the subroots of the roots of the roots of the roots of all the way down to the beginning of baby seed. But I think the reality is we all know like this exists because it's profitable emotionally, erotically, right, spiritually, culture, whatever, wherever they're at, to be like this. People are like this because they're produced. Like, it makes, if you can gain.
Thoughtful.
I mean, it's a libidinal economy. You know what I mean? I think that, like, you know, people say crazy things or act a certain way and are sexed in particular types of ways because it gains them something. And a lot of times this, shout out to our parents, we raised them like this.
Last time I said libidinal economy on here.
It was right. You're right. But so something CJ was saying last night in the house to me, and I listened. I watched a couple of different Black creators like talk about this, and smaller creators, and more like kind of like all Black people, like Black people who probably in their own life experience a certain level of otherization, like speak to it from a different point. And like when I mentioned all this to CJ's first thought process was like, the all weird, like, there's a certain level of that space in and of itself, that kind of space they exist in, is born out of a certain level of feeling pushed out from the main, like not accepted by the everybody. And I think like, and these are not, whenever you try to, an abolitionist framework has always met with an internet that likes like outrage and rage culture and just to like jump on everybody and give their lashings. They feel like you're just supposed to be giving everybody their lashings. They take this as like taking up for people, or, oh, you must like them, or that. No, I have no special affinity to Tyler the Creator or nothing like that. It's not taking up for anything, but it's just like a root cause kind of thing, is what is happening, like of trying to understand or empathize with, or at least get to how they get there. Because there's I was watching a couple of different clips and interviews and things how the creator has done over the years, which is all kind of weird shit, right? But when you see him be like his issues with Black women, and someone asked him, and he was like, an interviewer asked him, like, it was a Black woman, and he was like, he was like, I like white boys, or mixed with girls like me, or whatever. And she was like, are Black girls like starting to like you, whatever? And he was like, starting to. They still think I'm weird. And when he says that, she goes, well, you are weird. And he was like, well, you see, You see, that's how y'all think about me. So there is a certain level of, I want to like, don't just dismiss I'm not like crazy anti-Blackness, coolness, you shouldn't get there, whatever. But I do want to like talk about the validity of feelings and how they get down the long road of anti-Blackness, like how they make it there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
mean, they
said,
start thinking about us like a. Well, I mean, they start thinking about us like a group, right? Like other Black people, because
Yeah.
what we do. I mean, even in the language of weird, right? It's saying that you're
Yeah.
not like us. Shout out to Kendrick, but they're saying you're not like us, and so with them, is like all Black people treat me in a particular type of way, or all straight people, or whatever. And I'm not saying everyone has a totalizing view, but the reality is that like if you have something, even like coming out very young as queer, like the other people that came out around me when we were like 9 or 10, right? A lot of the gays around me, they developed a really interesting like gay lisp and high pitched voice that we only lasted for a couple of years, right? But it performed a particular type of way to showcase the fact that they're not going to be hurt by being gay or being called femme or being called a woman or all that shit, right? And some people are just femme, that's their life. I'm not denigrating that or anything, but I'm saying that like there were a lot of people that performed a particular type of role as armor, right? Or as a kind of nod toward desirability, or a nod toward, bitch, I'm dangerous and I will beat your ass. So I think there's a part of this that like is culturally produced, and not so much as like, oh, let's see this on TV, but the world that you're living in and the ways in which you have to navigate people is actually incentivizing you to behave this way, either for safety, for fear, or desirability. And I think it's almost always, and I shouldn't say always, but oftentimes it's very much that simple, right? What happened to you is really the question. And who produced those events, or that continuum, or that reality from the womb to the tomb?
I did want y'all thoughts on this, and y'all can tell me what y'all think. Because I did wonder. My best friend Mark is a white gay guy, but my best friend Mark really resonates with Andrew on Desperate Housewives, who's a pain in the ass. But he's Bree Vanderkamp is a Republican. Yeah. She's real annoying. She's real conservative, real traditional. Her gay son Andrew be doing all kind of hot mess shit, and you don't know why. You don't really understand why he hates his mommy so much in season 1. Like hates her and is doing all this stuff there, and then you eventually come to realize he's like, I always knew my Republican mommy was not going to accept me for being gay, so I jumped to hate it. I knew she would hate me, so I decided to hate her first. And I didn't really appreciate him as a character until my best friend told me how much like he resonated with feeling like that and living his life like that. And I'm wondering if there's a certain level of, it almost feels, I feel like Tyler the Creator's lashing out on Black people seemed to stop around the time Tyler the Creator came out and had a better response and receptive. Like as Tyler the Creator seemed to be coming more into his own and be received, it seemed like he stopped lashing out. And I wonder if a lot of that initial, like all that edgelord, all that hate, all that, because like we said, he's living in a predominantly Black area. It doesn't seem that he's not accepted by Black people around him. He has Black friends. He has this, he has that. I'm wondering if a lot of it is preemptive what I think I would be received in by this community, and like how much I think I'd be hated. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I think you have a great point. I think that's exactly what's happening. I think we're watching his identity converge in real time. And I think a part of that exploration is being an idiot. That's what I genuinely believe. I feel like there are no bad parts to people. There are bad things that people do. And at the end of the day, when it comes to Tyler the Creator, when he first came out and he was making all that crazy music and being a fool, in my personal opinion, he was trying to explore and find where he would fit in the world and how he could do so safely. And I think his goal, his desire, like you said, Dr. Anansi, is safety. I think he's very much so on that Maslow hierarchy of needs, trying to figure out how can I stay safe in this place, and how can I hate myself first before you do. And when he started to feel safer, when he found community, when he was surrounded by people who accepted him genuinely for who he was, which is like, he's a gay ass, that's okay. Like and they love you for it. And he says that. That's how he refers to himself now. Thank goodness, because it was better than everything else he was saying about 10 years ago. Like if he was able to be who he was then, we would not have gotten those albums. He may not have even been a performer, to be honest. Most entertainers, they need to be traumatized first. They need to have some part of themselves that they hate to create in the first place. And that's sad, but it is what it is. And I think he showed up in the way that he did at that time for those reasons. And I think if we are able to actually get to the root cause of these things, actually acknowledge people's emotions and the things that they go through, because it's really easy to get frustrated and angry about the things that he said. Like, I'm enraged by the things that he said during that time. I also can make space for the fact that he was likely going through a lot of different things psychologically that resulted in him making that type of content and putting that out to the world for whatever reason. And the only part now that I'm waiting for him to do, because hey, yeah, you went through that process and it was a really ugly one, and it was a very public ugly process. Now it's your turn, whether you decide to do this or not. And it is unlikely. He's an entertainer, and like y'all said, except for No Name, it's very unlikely that these entertainers are going to sit there and actually genuinely apologize for the things that they have done and make change after the fact. Like, that's very unlikely. But if he wants to be a different person, if he wants to surprise some people, if he wants to surprise himself, and if he wants to have a better relationship with himself, he would. And when you talk about like, who is this for? It's not for any of those people. I truly believe your first community is your body. It's your cells. It's yourself. He's walking around every day with cells that are not, I'm guaranteed, not corresponding with the way that he thought at one point in time. And they're not corresponding with the part of him that doesn't want to accept and acknowledge those things either. And that's going to manifest however it manifests in his body. I really believe that.
Baby, she said his soul and his cells are misaligned, honey.
His cells are misaligned. You cannot be black and hate black people and put that into the universe and think your cells are going to be in alignment with your spirit and everything else. Your body not even going. Listen.
That boy need a molecular chiropractor. I hear you.
It's Deshaun over here. Like, I'm like, Deshaun, unmute yourself, Deshaun. What you think?
I will say, I'm not an academic. I dropped out of college. I don't have the words. I don't have the verbiage. And sometimes I'm gonna ask y'all what y'all mean because I want to know, and I want to ask
you do
who
have
are watching who want to know.
You fully have the words.
I think Deshaun and I would agree though that like that are not academics oftentimes got more intelligence, more sense, and got a more open mind than people in the academy. So I think that's not the here nor there.
Yeah, 110%. Also, I would like to say that not only do I think that you have the words, like you've been expressing yourself very clearly.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
This entire time. And I am also not an academic. I know people think that I'm an academic.
I do.
Not Deshaun. Deshaun is writing his second book right now.
Because who are you playing with? It's not Halloween yet.
Deshaun, don't piss me off.
People, when I say I'm not an academic, I mean I'm not in the academy, right? So like yes. So anyway,
Deshaun is playing because they know some of the greatest scholars left the academy or have never been there. Deshaun is carrying right now.
Deshaun want to be in the people today.
So the point is,
baby. Okay, Paulie Murray is pissed.
To Olay's question, I think that you know, people do build all different types of walls and coping mechanisms, things like that, to like deal with this sort of like anticipatory anxiety that they might have about how people might engage them or might perceive them based off of what they see around the world, right? I studied sociology in school.
Oh, you studied in school?
Oh, tell us more about what you learned in school, my non-academic friend.
Yeah, then you wrote a book.
I studied sociology in school, and one thing that we talk about were like social institutions, and what that was like family, religious spaces, media, schools, or education systems, etc., operate as social institutions that teach us from birth what it is that like we should and should not do, how we should and should not engage in the world, how we should and should not show up, and how people should and should not perceive us. What y'all laughing?
Because we in school. Come on, Professor. You better tell me about the social determinants of health.
Yes. You know, this is a very different.
Yes.
Thank you.
Why are all the black kids sitting together in the cafeteria, honey? Let us know.
So the reason why I named that is because what I'm saying is that Tyler the Creator, just like all of us was taught through all these various social institutions from birth how he should engage the world and how the world will engage him if he goes against that. And I do think that a big part of this sort of like alt or underground or grunge space oftentimes is about people sort of like choosing to exist against the grain before the grain can choose to exist against them, right? And what that has meant for a lot of people, for a lot of Black people especially, is that it is accompanied with a different level of like radical pro-Black activism that I think oftentimes has just been stripped down from that in different parts of these spaces because anti-Blackness is everywhere, for one, and also because I think that whiteness is so pervasive. And so because of that, like, it has taken away people's willingness or ability to sort of like mesh those two worlds in a way that I think is important. But Tyler, the Creator, to your question, Olay, I do think that like there is a part of him and a part of people like him who are like, you know, I'm gonna exist in this way because I already know that y'all see me as queer, right? And I don't mean queer in terms of sexuality, but I mean queer. Y'all see me as weird. Y'all see me as this person who sort of exists outside the box, who doesn't exist in this sort of like normative way. And so I'm going to perform in that way. And unfortunately, when you are coming up in an era where like the internet is particularly new and people are being exposed to a different culture online than what they are used to, and they're like they're like really impressionable, right? Like, I think that just forced a lot of our like Black youth in general to turn to this very like anti-Black, very like conservative, very like deeply violent way of thinking versus turning to what many of us, those of us who are like on this call, turn to and found in like a different type of community. And I think, again, not knowing him, but just sort of seeing this like trajectory from his albums, he seems to be existing in a way where he's like, okay, I found that space and it felt like home for me in a moment where I didn't feel like I had a home. And now I'm in a different space, but I've already created a brand, an understanding with the people who have platformed me, who have monetized my brand, who have given me this sort of room, space to exist in the ways that I do. And now I'm like having this sort of like internal battle. And so I think that there is some validity to what you're thinking, Olay. And I also think that like, for those of us who understand structures and systems, we know that I, not just but like people people and ideologies are built by a lot of different things and ideas, and not just they're not just born into it. And so like, yeah, you know, I think all those things together inform who he is and who he is becoming.
I want to give him some grace, but also I don't want to give him no grace, because now I'm very conflicted about what grace even means right now, because y'all with me. So one tidbit I find really interesting, I was looking up, you know, what the census data, because y'all know me, for when he lived in Hawthorne. And at the time, you know, it was 55% Latino. And I think that is a very different type of orientation to kind of grow up in. So the town is 20% Black, the rest of the people of color, and 52% Latino, who probably mostly identify as white. Like, what does that Latinos do? Because, and you know how California be. Let's not play. Anyway, no shade, love some of y'all, but anyway, but like, what does that also do to like a young Black person who may or may not already be noting themselves as sexually queer, even if they're not identifying as politically so, and maybe are culturally queer in a non-sexual way, as Deshaun is saying? Like, what does that do to you if, right, you know, one, there's a small sect of Black people you could possibly be interested in, right? How much do you see about your damn cousins or your family friends or your play cousins? And then the majority of the people there are folks that do not share your culture at all. Like, what does that begin to look like? And also, what amplified role does anti-Blackness play when you're also in a majority Latino space, right? That, because we know how Latinos do Black Latinos, and that's a lot going on, and you're Igbo, right? With the mixed mama. And that I don't even know. I can't even imagine. I'd have to write a book on that. So I find that's like one thing. But the other part of it too, like when Jay was talking about this, is like, all right, like we know how hard it is, how hard it was at the time for people to come out. But I'm at the same time, I'm like, we the same age. Right. Like, so like there are a lot of people that came out our age and, you know, we went through all of that. And this isn't like some type of, I went through it, so you should go through it type of thing. But it also was like, wait, like there are decisions that are being made here and choices and like, what do those look like? And then on the flip side, though, you're also bisexual. And we also know how like bisexuality has been treated both in the queer community, but also in the communities writ large, Black allegedly, but also not allegedly, right? Because like there's a type, there's a type of bisexual that can slide anywhere, but then there's also the kind of weird bisexual that actually cannot, right? And then like lastly, I'm gonna land the plane on this, but like lastly, I think it's interesting that we keep talking, even though I just did too, about him being weird and like what does that breed, and right, the kind of anticipatory violence and the kind of shield building that so-called outcasts do. I can almost guarantee that each and every one of us on this call were actually the weird too, right? Y'all the weird that want to sit up and read books and listen to music and be by yourself and be creative. Like we had to find, right? And so like, so what I think is like really interesting though was like not only were our behaviors identity so-called weird, outcast, strange, or whatever, and some of us are celebrating, someone's got our ass beat or try to beat our ass, whatever. But on the other hand though, like when you look at the ideas that he's spouting, those are not non-mainstream Black ideas, right? Like a lot of the shit he was saying, I can go pull up right now to a barbershop in 2025 and hear. So I think we really need to be careful about this idea that like these are necessarily fringe thoughts or fringe comments. In many ways, those of us on this call are low-key the fringe of the Black community, intellectually, right? Ideologically. So I think that like, I'm not saying that like he's the mainstream, but I also don't want to sit here and think that he's somewhere off on an island and so far outside of Blackness that we ain't never heard of this shit. So how do we square all of these?
I do know I want to call. I know at some point in time in this life, I have to like convene some kind of club for knockoff Nigerians and like myself and how we get perceived in this current world, because it's so funny it's so funny. Like I was thinking about this when I love Issa Rae. Love Issa Rae like down. That bitch is very relatable to me personally. And it's so funny because when I think of Issa Rae, I think of somebody who is always having the fact that she's African pushed at the forefront of her like criticism about her or whatever. And I know that something similar is done to me. And when I was listening to Issa Rae's book, it's so funny because Issa Rae don't see herself as African. Like first, she sees herself as a Black American, like calls herself a Black American. Like
wait, I did not know she was African.
No, not you, Anansi, not anything you were saying.
No. But I'm saying like I'm shook because you just let me know that Issa Rae's African. I had no idea.
And you see, exactly. I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. When we're good, when we're not in trouble, no one knows. Okay, no one knows. like everybody sees Issa Rae. You know, she's rooting for everybody Black. Oh, this is Black. You know, the show's Black. It's all Black until didn't like her. They was mad at them on one of them days. And all of a sudden, she African, and it's always funny to me because a lot of the people that get this like put on you, including myself, I'm like, very little African about you outside of blood and name. And Issa, and it was interesting listening to Issa talk about herself because she has a chapter in her book, which she like largely denounces. Her first book, was it The Misadventures of Awkward Black World? Her she has a chapter in the book called like Categories of Black People, and she lists off like categories of different kinds of Black people, and she makes the similar kind of disparaging remarks that make about Africans and Caribbean people. And I paused the audio note like, bitch, you know they mean, you know you're with here, you're one of me? Do you know they don't mean? And it was so funny because I'm like, so many, like and I understand why she feels that way because she's American. She's American. Like she's American. She's born in America, lived her life in America. She's American. And yet like people will filter you through this lens. And I think of it like about myself, even like in the Bahamas. I was born and raised in the Bahamas. I've never been to the continent of Africa. People put Nigerian first to the point where, you know what I mean? Like I have to feel some kind of like, oh, we're Nigerian too, but ain't shit too much Nigerian about me. And I think about that, like thinking about Tyler, I'm like, look at you. American is you're born and raised in America, mama American, you be talking shit in your daddy, but like see you Igbo first. And I think that's like there's something like I'm like separately, I'm like, I have to explore about we to knock off Africans. Like that's how I call myself a knockoff Nigerian. I try to put that out there so no, like don't filter me through a proper African lens. Like how much that has, like how much that plays in it, because it's funny. People will see. I think a lot of like knockoff Nigerians that do the wrong, knockoff Africans that do the wrong thing. People will see it as like you have Africans in the home talking shit on Black people and Blackness. But I think if anything, it's probably the absence of such. That's, you know what I mean? If anything, it's more so like my daddy always had an energy of both my parents are extremely pro-Black, like, so never any of this. But my daddy, in terms of not feeling the need to make me super Nigerian, my daddy always felt like, well, we're not there. You know what I mean? Like, we're in the Bahamas. I know you're Bahamian. I don't feel any need to like go out of my way, whatever. And I think it's like less than what I think is happening on the knockoffs when the house is going wild. It's not that there are Africans in the household talking shit. You know what I mean about Blackness? It's more so not talking about it at all, or thinking about it, or letting you go about your American existence and figure it out. And you stumbling around, like trying to figure out what's the right lens and how you're being filtered to and what's being said back to you about you and what people think about you when they see you as African. Because I've always had that. Like, my name is Olay Friends, so the world sees you as African first, but I ain't never been there. I'm from the islands. You know what I mean? And so I think that's like something I've been thinking about with Tyler, like watching how Tyler's existence is like thinking about that. Like, wow, you're being Igbo comes up first for you, just the way like being Yoruba comes up first for me. Meanwhile, I'm like, how good, like, how much you know about that? And that's just something like hearing that. I'm like, I want to know so much about his particular, like, what's your knockoff African experience, sir?
I don't know. So I think that like everything you said is true. And I think that's something we need to like sit with, not just as like, you know, in this conversation, but just as like, what does it mean to be Black in America? And I think that like, one of the things that just like from my own,
when do they get to be American? I guess to me, it's like, when do they get to be American?
Well, I think that like, that's the other part, right? And I think this conversation, you see me have it online all the time, is like the difference between being a Black American and African American, right? African American ethnicity, Black American, right, is a national identity and or a race, right? If you think about Blackness. And so I think that like one of the things that happens is, and this is the conversation I think always goes left, because people have an elementary understanding of race and ethnicity and nationality. But what I think that like where the conversation begins is like, you look at Barack Obama, right? Not African American, a Black American, of course, right? His dad's Kenyan, no ancestry of slaves, nothing that wasn't here in the 1800s, right? You look at Kamala Harris, highest ranking people, and oftentimes you see that, and people get the wrong idea about like what does it mean to be able to be successful in like public life in America without kind of getting dragged down by particular types of anti-Blackness. And I think people assume because someone has ancestry somewhere else that's a different thing. But I think the real part of it, that's the bullshit part. But I think the real issue that people are really trying to grapple with oftentimes is like, there's a curiosity of what it means to also like have a home. Right. So when you can say just in that moment, like, okay, you're in the Bahamas and your dad is like, wait a minute, I'm not even going to talk to you about Nigeria right now because we're not there. But the reality is you still know about it. Right? You can go back, right? Even if you come to the States. Whereas I think there's a certain type of psychological violence that like African Americans experience in the knowing that this is all the you ever gonna have, right? And people are raised in that way. And I don't think it's like necessarily a knowledge, but I think it's a response to centuries of trauma that have kind of ordered and disordered the ways in which we live and die, interact with the world, and even conceive of life and death. And I think that when people encounter folks that actually have a named ancestry, there's a type of curiosity, but there's also a type of skepticism. And if I'm being honest, I think there's a level of jealousy, right? There's a level of insecurity about like what Blackness in America is oftentimes defined as in opposition to white life or the opposite. Whereas if you're Nigerian, you can say these are our cultures, whatever, and our cultures are not seen as valued, even if we cherish them, right? Even with Tyler talking about, well, shit, why I got to get the rap album? Right? Like, you know what I mean? Can this be an album of the year or something else like that? So I feel like there's a lot going on there. And I've rarely ever seen like a public space, even like we're having this brief conversation now, where the insecurities of this, the violence of it, the truth of it, the bullshit of it, right, is actually hashed out in some way.
I have thoughts, and they're going to get weird. Just a warning. Because if earlier y'all were getting very environmental, and I think that's like super important for where like Tyler the Creator was at one point in time. I think his environment and the resources he had available to him at the time, especially like you got to think about the fact that at that time, Tosh Point South Park, Family Guy, all of those shows, like Adult Swim was very popular, and that's what he was likely watching. He's a very Adult Swim ass me. Like I can tell what type of person he is based off of like I know he was watching that every single evening. But I also think that he's just Doja Cat in a different font. I think these are two of the same people with absentee parents, with a culture that they didn't have enough information about, and that leaves you searching. It leaves you vulnerable to different environments, different resources that you wouldn't have otherwise maybe come across if you had more access to your actual culture directly from the person who's responsible for putting you on this earth. I think that the reason that Doja Cat was up there putting her feet on the internet and talking to white men and letting them call her the N-word, and then the same reason that Tyler, the Creator, was out here making the music that he was making and letting his friends say the N-word, even though they weren't Black, is the same reason. I think they were vulnerable and expressing themselves and a desire to be accepted by something that didn't look like the thing that abandoned them. And that is, in both cases, an African daddy, unfortunately. That don't mean all African daddies is doing this and that every African daddy that's absent is going to result in some kid that's out here doing this dumbass shit. But I do think there's something to be said about two very famous performers who had almost identical situations for the most part and ended up doing the same stupid ass shit. Like there's some link there, I think, for that to have happened. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I didn't want to, like, I can see how a person would not desire something that left them at their most vulnerable time. Like, I could see how that would become a thing, because Tyler, the Creator, says he does not like Black men, specifically when it comes to dating. He doesn't date Black men. And I think that's a really important thing to take note of in terms of how desire was built in his head. About what he desires in the real world when he dates, because he doesn't want to date someone that reminds him of his first rejection.
I mean, I know a lot of gays, little Black gays like that, baby.
And I'm just learning this for the first time. So y'all are probably like, duh. But I don't know this information. I just looked this shit up today and I'm learning about it. But I feel there is a link in those things. And I feel like that's why he ended up being the way that he is. And Doja ended up being the way that she was and doing the stupid shit she was doing. I don't know. I think we should explore it.
I think it's probably relevant. Here's the thing. This is the thing I think that's true is Black people have 1,000 avenues to become coons. Anti-Blackness is fed in a million.
It's the most natural thing.
You know what I mean? If you can always walk it back on a, you know what I mean? Like there's always so to me, I'm like 1,000%. I'm like I believe that, yes, but I believe that you could get 1 million Black people of every like region, play area, and find a bunch of anti-Blackness or whatever, and it is not like. Well, I guess where I want us to get past, and not us, like us this from our Olay and Friends, but like the discourse in general is, I want us to get past this idea of trying to pathologize particular groups of Black people and trying to act like they have a higher prevalence of anti-Blackness when that is not the case. So when I'm like, every Black community is like, every Black community has anti-Blackness, like force swimming around you, like being force fed you, swimming around you, given to you, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And there's always, you can always like explain it. Like, I know exactly how that happened. Like, yeah, that's how I can say that happened with Doja. I can say that happened with Tyler. I can say how this happened with Lil Wayne. I can say that this happened with everybody because it's there. You know what I mean? Like you always have the, you know what I mean? Like if I was a coon, like this is the way I see it. If I was a coon right now, you could easily be like, if you want to say if I was a coon, to be like, oh well, her daddy African. You know what I mean? Her mommy Caribbean.
No,
I'm not saying that. Or she went to boarding. No. I know none of us are saying that. I'm saying she went to boarding school in West Virginia. She went to this. She went to that. Like there are all these occasions to meet anti-Blackness. You know what I mean? And to decide to live that or whatever. It's just about whether or not you do or you don't, or you figure it out, you learn it, you see it. But I think that's the kind of like the bigger monster in the room is the way that like I think anti-Blackness chases down their whole time from the minute you're born. Like that's what I think of when I think about having kids. Me and CJ talk about the ways in which we got to battle anti-Blackness. Like, what if our son wanted to do football, but then these might be saying anti-Black shit in the locker room. Like who the kid's gonna know, who they're gonna be around, and all these different things, you know?
But that's the
I mean, that's why I don't want to have kids.
Because
I agree.
I really believe if we analyze though how these things are happening, because it doesn't matter who or what or really any ethnicity has nothing to do with it, because there are Asian people who don't want to date other Asian people. This is not like, I'm not saying it in that way. I'm just saying I think that there is some level, like I'm thinking about there was, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Jeannie Mai and the woman that dated Jeezy. Yeah. There was a point on The Real where she talked about her father, who's obviously Asian. He was eating, like their leftovers out the trash. And she starts crying about that on the reel. And then she later goes on to express how she's never been attracted to Asian men for the reason that her first, like, she's seeing her father who's taking care of them. He's working his ass off. He don't got enough money to feed himself. He had to eat their leftovers from Popeyes. Like, that was his only option. But that sent a message to her that that is not the type of man that she wants to be with, that will protect her, keep her safe. And I think that's like an interesting, like, if you're left to the devices of the world that are going to teach you the same thing, you know, like we're in a world where that is expressed in a lot of media, and it's fucked up, but there are a lot of like things going on like that. So if we already are having Black children that are vulnerable to the same messaging, and maybe for you, Olay, you were lucky that the resources that were pushed towards you initially, who knows, I can't speak for you. I know for me, I probably would have been transphobic if I didn't read one particular book. I can literally, like, that is who I would have been growing up in rural Michigan if I didn't read one book. It was one book being the difference between me having that belief or not. So I just...
That's interesting.
And it's the truth for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had something similar because I grew up, before I moved to Kansas City when I was like 10, I grew up in rural Kansas. And one of the things, my face keep going crazy because I've never heard the word coon so much. Olay has it on the show all the time. Where I come from, you ready to fight? So I'm like, oh, girl, wow, who's cool? Girl, don't call me that. So that's always funny when I come on here. But like, no, for me, I had the opposite issue. Like when I was in college and finally started like dating men, I was very clear. At first, I did not want to date Black men, not because I wasn't attracted to them. That was never the issue. It was because I was too attracted to their asses. And I really felt it, like walk with me though. Yes, I really felt it, not like the sexual piece, that like I could be so emotionally invested in you and like what you need to do and where you're supposed to be, that this could fuck up my life. And I knew that there was no other man, right, Latino, white, whatever, that could grasp me in that moment emotionally enough for me to give a fuck to risk anything, right? And I had just, and I think part of it too was that internalized shit where you grow up in a situation where Black women do anything for Black men. Right. And literally you see some of the most brilliant Black women lose their shit, not intentionally, but just trying to be there and be moral and be loving and caring for a Black man and lose everything. And so for me, I was deeply attracted to Black men, but I also knew that I need to graduate college and y'all was not finna fuck up my shit. And I wasn't going back home. So I think your broader point though, Jay, is that like we develop a lot of these narratives as children. And to Olay's point, I think I forget what scholar, I mean, Professor Deshaun over there might know, but somebody said a long time ago in the 90s that like anti-Blackness is the smog that we breathe, right? Yeah. It's literally in our pores. It was a Black lesbian writer, scholar that said it. But she said, you know, it's literally everything. So I think it's a miracle when people have overcome, all of us on the stage, a certain modicum of anti-Blackness because it's still in us, right? Like the norm is anti-Blackness. That is the center. And I think we just need to deal with that.
That I think is Anansi is like my fundamental point is that the norm is anti-Blackness. Like people, whenever I hear like the Caribbean stereotyped in America, when everybody's talking about like Caribbean, they're always stereotyping the Caribbean as being like, we don't know we're Black, we don't claim we're Black, and all this bullshit that I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like in the Bahamas, Black is literally the Black in the flag. In the flag represents the people. I have my damn flag here somewhere, right? It represents the people, right? And like all Bahamians identify as Black and being proud of Black, but I'm sure you're gonna hear a bunch of anti-Blackness. It's because I believe the norm is anti-Black. The average fully Black community has anti-Blackness coursing through its veins because colonialism, because all these different things. And I think what happens is like people do this thing where they start to pretend like the norm is this incredibly progressive Black. And like what I see done like all the time, like existing in America can be frustrating because it's like I lived in the Bahamas, I lived in America, I lived all over the place. I know Africans, I know Caribbeans, I know this. And every single one of these communities have all kind of anti-Blackness because it was given to us. It's actively forced, like forced over us. That's what like colonialization is in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, in what Nigeria was. Like my name is Olayemi, my daddy's name is Ayodele, but his parents' names were James and Francis because that was the era of the colonizers in Nigeria. So I said it to say, is it always there? It's anti-Blackness is what's typical, I think, of a Black communal experience. So like, yeah, it's what Anansi was saying to me. It's about overcoming that. I see it as like, I see everybody as being on a road with a million different exits for anti-Blackness, for like, and I think even on the current road you're walking in, even if you go on a normal, average, like unchecked, uncritical Black experience, it's going to have a bunch of anti-Blackness because the way you said, Jay, that one book is the reason why you probably without that one book would have been transphobic. when I think of my college experience, without being forced to take African American studies and all these different things, I would be a coon by my own understandings of a coon, but I wouldn't have been a coon to me. I would have
Yeah.
seen myself. What the fuck are you talking about? Of course I'm black. Of course I'm pro-black and all that.
Yeah.
But your average black shit be anti-black is what I'm saying. I'd have been a coon sitting right there like, what are you? Ain't nothing wrong with Shanae or Martin. Stop being sensitive, bitch. Like, you know what I mean? I've been right there, like refusing to see the thing. So that's, I guess, like what I be wanting us to come down to is like, no. Our typical, that's the reason why we see the barbershop. We see barbershop talk as being, we know it's going to be filled with anti-blackness and misogynoir and all these different things.
Yeah.
Same thing. I know I'm a hair number regressive shit at the hair salon as well. Because the average, that's what I'm saying, is our average black spaces that look beautiful on picture are not as pro-black and black as magic, you know what I mean, as we'd like to believe.
Because we know how to act in public. That's what else really quickly. I was like, but we know how to act in public, right? Like those of us that are trying to whatever get any type of money, keep a job. We all know about our internalized anti-blackness and shit we cannot say in public, right? And like in public, we act a certain way. At the barbershop, the salon, we're not under surveillance anymore. You can say whatever the you want to say. You ain't got to worry about why it's taken. You're not losing no cultural cachet. So I think there's just something about like black anti-black surveillance and then white anti-black surveillance and how these things kind of operate and what our incentives and disincentives are. And the last thing I'll say is like, Olay, you was talking about, all the exits, right, for anti-blackness, but I think it's the actual opposite. I think we're on a forced superhighway and there's rarely any exit to not be anti-black. And so when someone actually finds an exit, and if you take that exit, right, and now you're doing something that's not anti-black, can you afford to get back on the highway and get home? Because oftentimes that consciousness is a theft, right, both psychologically and economically. So it's like, shit, if I really acknowledge that, and I think sometimes we do this in our brains, if I really go down that rabbit hole of how bad and anti-black this shit is, right, where's that going to leave me?
Yeah, I feel
so
that.
It's wrong.
I think there's a couple things that come to mind for me, and I won't be Professor Professor Harrison, but
Yes.
one, the black woman that you were quoting earlier, her name is Keisha Porcher. She said anti-blackness is smog. We all breathe it in, and I agree with her.
I agree with her.
I agree with her. But I think it's just important to name that like anti-blackness is inescapable, which is to say that none of us are ever not anti-black. And I think that the issue that comes up in these sort of conversations is that we are always wanting to perform as if we have achieved or found a way to exist outside of anti-blackness's scope. But the reality is that just is not true. It cannot be true for as long as the anti-black world exists, right? It is, again, anti-blackness is smog. We all breathe it in. So it's like, for me, like, I don't even want to talk about this too long, but going back to the Libidnu economy, that is the very thing that structures everything about the world in which we live. And Olay,
Professor,
explain the Libidnu economy to Jay.
I see. I don't want to talk.
Deshaun, what you mean you don't want to talk about it? Now when people want to hear from you,
you know what? Here's a real quick. Here's a real quick version, Jay. Think about Janet Jackson's track, The Pleasure Principle, right? So it's the idea that there's a kind of exchange of pleasure, right, that allows people to gain certain type of powers and privileges in society, even if they're not articulated, right? So the more pleasurable someone's experience or identity, the things that they have can bring us, the more likely we are to actually really extract part of our livelihoods for them or allow them to extract it on our behalf.
Yes.
Okay, so
great.
what happened with Cardi B and that girl who was calling her out for being fat phobic? Is that an example of that?
So the Libidnu, I'm gonna
look at you.
Go
You
ahead.
brought it up. Now you got to teach.
Yes. Okay. So the Libidnu economy, like as simple as I can explain it, is it functions in any other sort of like economy, a political economy, monetary economy, etc., where something is bought, exchanged, traded, etc. And so what it means as it is used by folks like Dr. Frank Wilderson and Jared Sexton, is that attraction, negativity, etc. is all exchanged, traded, gifted, and taken back in a way that like structures the world that we live in. That's like the simplest way I can explain that, at least in this moment. And so what that basically means is that how people perceive us, you know, when people talk about like quote unquote pretty privilege, I don't use that language, but that is essentially what people are trying to get at when they talk about pretty privilege. It's like you are given access to something because of how people find you desirable, but also it's discursive because you might be desirable in this one space, but you may not be necessarily like the representation of somebody who is quote unquote conventionally attractive. So in one other space, you might not be seen as desirable, right? Whereas like as a Black person in a white space, you may not ever be witnessed as desirable, but in a Black specific space, right, where you are, if you're a light-skinned, thin, cis person who's able-bodied, right, who's Christian, you might be understood as an attractive person. The Libidnu economy is just this thing that sort of structures not only our sex, but this sort of like psychosexual nature of the world. Hopefully that was clear. The reason why I'm naming that is to say that like desirability, it quite literally structures everything about the world that we live in. And so a Tyler the Creator or who all of us are like directly engaged or directly informed by this ideology. We're directly our actions, our decisions, consciously and unconsciously, are informed by this ideology, this thing that structures the world, and that structure is determined by anti-Blackness. So when I say that like there is no way there is no exit on this highway for us to escape anti-Blackness, what I'm saying is that desirability, anti-Blackness has structured the world in a way where we're not able to excuse ourselves from this violence because it structures everything about the world that we experience. It's in the air, we breathe it in. So yeah.
It becomes very difficult then to look at Tyler the Creator as anything other than someone who breathed under those circumstances and just regurgitated what was in there back out. And I feel like in a way that's very poetic because it's like, okay, if I breathe in some nasty ass shit, I want to throw it up too. And it's kind of cool that he made all them white people buy it, but it also sucks because, you know, it's not cool that he regurgitated all of those things and then benefited from said things. But also it kind of is because he's Black and it's there anyway, but also he perpetuated it. So it's,
I think there's just a level to it, right? So it's like, of course, anti-Blackness is the smog that we breathe, right? And we can talk about that. But I think there's a difference between saying everyone's breathing in this smog, but bitch, you know, you got the COVID version of anti-Blackness and you walking into a room and purposely breathing on hoes, right? You know what I mean? Like, and not telling nobody, right? But people like the way you sound. They like the way you vibe and they'll pay you to come by. You don't give a fuck that you spread in Omicron. Right, you could have put on a mask. At least some people will be like, I'm anti. I know I'm a little up, so let me think about this. Let me filter some of this shit with my little canine mask. And so I think maybe that's a difference. But I think also to your point, right, it's inevitable that a rich gonna be anti-Black and be louder anti-Black because they got a bigger platform. But at some point,
I think that,
right,
like,
you got to remediate. Have some remedial things to do.
I think that like the point is that for me, there actually is no layers to the anti-Blackness. We are all always perpetuating harm to one another because of how anti-Blackness functions, right? That's what the Libidnu economy means. That's what it looks like in real time. Is that in real time we are always actively harming and being harmed by each other because of how the world is structured. I think the difference is that there is a level of intentionality that goes into the ways that people harm folks versus the sort of like unintentional or unconscious way of harming people that I think overdetermines how then we respond to that harm, right? So for me, it's like, you know, I could go up and slap somebody on purpose because I don't like that person, right? That's a very intentional act of harm, right? versus somebody coming up to me and slapping me because they think that I'm somebody else, that I'm not, right? Like that's like a very unintentional act of harm, but it's still a very harmful act. And so what I mean when I say that, like, that the libidinal economy is something that structures the world, and that we are always like, or that for those of us for all of us to exist under the libidinal economy, we have to be trading and exchanging something. What I mean is that we are always actively exchanging harms, even if we don't know it. And so what then ends up happening is that Tyler the Creator becomes special because the harm that he has bought into, that he has sort of platformed, is one that's not unique. That is a very clear example of anti-Blackness, a very clear example of white supremacy, and it's also more public. And what I'm saying is that, to me, even though many people try to put these things on different scales and on different like layers, for me, anti-Blackness is anti-Blackness, and it's harmful. And so, like, my interest is in who is working towards acknowledging and undoing, for as much as they can, that level of anti-Blackness, versus somebody who has bought into it and has agreed to it and is just committed to it.
But if
I
it's
think this is where we like
pre-existing,
depart intellectually too. Is
huh?
that like I think that as I was thinking, like for Deshaun, I think this is actually where we like depart ideologically and intellectually, because I think that, like, of course, like anti-Blackness, like definitionally and how it's experienced is anti-Blackness, but I do think that there are levels to it, and particularly when we're thinking about not just the libidinal economy, but the kind of like the economy of anti-Blackness. And with any economy, right, there can be monopolies, there can be large corporations, right, that have inordinate amounts of power. And I think that as individuals, even though day by day we are engaging particular types of harm, there are those of us that are not only engaging in types of harm incidental to the anti-Black climate or weather, as Christina Sharp would say, right, that we live in, but are in fact conjuring it. And I think that, like, there's a difference though between the conjuring, and we might think about this being like harm and violence. Okay, I bumped into you and you fell and broke your shoulder. Okay, I punched the fuck out of you and you fell and bumped your shoulder. Some people might say, and I think maybe an articulation you're giving, that there's no difference there. But I think that if someone just goes around punching the fuck out of people throughout the community to make them fall and hurt their shoulders, right, and then gets paid for it, there's a different thing happening there. And perhaps maybe if we're just thinking about like impact versus intent, that doesn't matter. But I do think that if you're conjuring a type of alchemy of anti-Blackness, and now you're beginning to intentionally make a living off of this thing and make it algorithmically infectious, there's something else going on than the person that's day to day living in an anti-Black world, right, and harming people according to, and maybe going back to what Jay was talking about, right, the kind of molecular makeup of imbibing and breathing anti-Blackness. So I think that there are levels to this when I think about policymakers that are passing national laws knowing they're anti-Black, like Tim Scott. When I think about presidents, or I think about people that are running large corporations or these media things, I think that their engagement with anti-Blackness is at a completely different level, right? It might have more generations of harm for millions of people across generations. Whereas an individual, of course, we all have millions, well, thousands of people that we might interact with. But I think those are maybe different things. But I think it's a question of, right, are we talking about impact or the fact that this virus or this smog is just out there?
And that's what I was gonna ask. It's like, if the smog is there, my difficulty becomes then if I'm breathing this in every day, or like, let me put myself in the mindset of Tyler the Creator when he was 14 years old or wherever he was at, right? If I'm going to breathe it in regardless, right? And it's there already, and it's most easily accessible to me. Anti-Blackness is the most easily accessible thing to me at this moment in time at 14. Then what I then put out there for the world, I may not even be conscious of it being wrong. Like how do we know that he was fully conscious of the fact that what he was putting out into the world under those circumstances where the default is anti-Blackness was wrong? How do we know that?
We may not. Yeah. We don't know, right? Like we don't know if that was intentional or not. But I think that I think that is the point, is that whether it was intentional or not, it happened, right? It is something that he did. And for me, I think that's where the acknowledgement comes in. It's like, you know, you don't have to be. Now, I'm not somebody who believes that Tyler the Creator was not aware. I just don't believe that to be true. But like, whether he was or not also just doesn't matter to me. To me, it's like, this is something that you did. Acknowledging that as such is what feels most important to me, because yeah, be anti-black, because it is what the it is. And also there has to be a level of commitment for me to find interest in you, for me to want to be in community with you, for me to want to engage your art, for me to want to engage you as a person, whatever. There has to be a commitment to acknowledging the ways in which you are anti-black, and acknowledging like your commitment to its undoing, it's being anti-blackness. And I don't think that that's something that Tyler Perry, or LOL, that Tyler the Creator is committed to. There's a reason why that name keeps slipping up, but I don't think that that's something that Tyler the Creator is committed to. And so for me, it's like, you
But
know,
why would he be under the? So, I'm sorry. Well, I'm just
he wouldn't.
right.
There is no
Under
incentive
these
to be. There is
circumstances,
no incentive to not be anti-black if it is the
it's
thing that
white
is
people
going to get
fault.
you paid.
Right.
That's how I feel.
When
As we talk about this, the only thing I can think is where
Absolutely.
it's the same thing. The metaphor that you used earlier, where you were referencing how it's a rope-a-dope basically earlier. This is the same thing in like literally in action. Like we're talking about Tyler the Creator and why he is the way that he is, but if anti-blackness is pre-existent, we breathing it in every day, the likelihood that we're going to pick up some of it and replicate that in our lives, personally, professionally, whatever the case may be, is 100%. If it's already at 100%, it's white people's fault. And we need to focus on them. Like, it don't even matter what Tyler the Creator is doing. I'm sorry, Plant. It don't even matter.
you little
Well, I
monstera.
think that it does matter because Tyler the Creator is not an everyday black person. Tyler the Creator is somebody who has power, and he has authority, and he has influence that I think matters in determining why it's important to this is why I'm always, I think people need to be more honest about separating black celebrities from like an everyday black thinker or everyday black person, because we have very different experiences. Not Which is not to say that they are not black, but it is to say that like there's a certain level of power, influence, and impact that a person is able to have at a Tyler the Creator level versus mine or yours, that I think really it matters in how we think about these things.
You say mine or yours. I think that's funny. I'm supposed to be like, this is where I would abruptly end the episode, and I had a little funny quip and stuff, but I feel like I'd be remiss to point out you say like mine or yours, but like I'm sure there's some like an everyday black person watching the show that feels like, oh well, there's levels to this, and that's convenient because they probably don't think you're an everyday black person. You know what I mean? I'm like, you walking in. I'm like, Jay got hundreds of thousands of followers and shit. You know what I mean? I got your book on the shelf. 500,000 people watched what you had to say last month. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, they'd probably be like, you're not a normie yourself.
They probably do think that.
My frustration just comes from like, I feel like we're focusing on Tyler in the same way that rope-a-dope that Dr. Anansi described earlier. I'm not saying what he has done does not matter. Like in the context of what he has made, what he's put into the world, yes, he should have some responsibility for what he's doing as a human being.
But it's bigger than him.
That's right.
It's so much bigger than him. Yeah. And if it's that much bigger than him, if this anti-blackness is pre-existing, if we're constantly breathing it in, where is it coming from? Where is the vent? And how do we close it? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. If they're going to breathe it in anyway. And I know this might seem very like rudimentary to y'all, because this is new to me. I am exploring this for the first time, because I would have just been like, oh damn, they dragging them, and went about my day. Unless
no, I think it's important the way you're engaging it.
They're not an academic. Started and then began a full lecture on the Libidnu economy, and now you have a pen and you're up asking questions based on the lecture these two professors have given.
But I want to say though, like this is really important though, because I think, Jay, like what you and like Olay's kind of jokingly pointing at, but I think like it's important for people to see folks engage with these ideas in real time, right? Like as a real person who has, a platform, but it is around diverse people, diverse ideas all the time, still kind of wrestling with this and what are the immediate questions that come to mind, and the ability to take this perspective and that perspective, not necessarily claim either one, right? But throw a new one out and then make another. So I think that like this exercise is actually something that's really lost. And I think it is the reason, right, that the smog becomes so heavy and so irresistible. Because at the end of the day, I think you were saying, and Olay was saying before, that like Black people are not only affected, of course, by anti-Blackness, but we have the least amount of resources to resist it. Right? Like, do you got a vent? Right? You got a filter? You got an HVAC at your house? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of it, but I also just want to, and just like last thing I'll say, I think it's just really important to remember that all of us start off, I think, as regular, and that is actually where, I mean, if you look at like psychology and neuroscience, where the most of our kind of early ideas are formed. And so we can talk about like who he is today, but in reality is probably a lot of these ideologies were formed when he was 9, 12, 13, 15. So these are the regular ideas that we're now bringing into our adult lives, and those have effects. So I think we gotta sit with the gumbo, right? That intellectual gumbo or ideological gumbo that we're allowing our children to be fed, and that as adults right now we're passing down.
Mm-hmm. I think that is a beautiful final word for a show. Hey y'all, this is not a promo, this is not a sponsorship, but I am asking you for something. If you have it, I would love for you to reach deep into your bag and donate to Scalawag magazine so we could support legitimate media in this Trump administration where they are gutting public media and honest journalism left, right, and center. And if we love our beloved Deshaun, as I know we do, we will support their magazine. So please donate to Scalawag here. The link will be in the description. Stop what you're doing and listen up. You just watched a video on one of my channels, but the Illuminativerse is huge, and I want to tell you what everything is and how to find it. The Illuminativerse has 6 channels. On the YouTube homepage of any one of those channels, every single channel in the Illuminativerse is featured at the bottom of the page, so you can always easily find them. Okay? Remember I said that. Don't say I ain't tell you how to find it. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long-form video essays and also all of my backlog of content. Subscribe to my second love child, Illuminati Pop, for my weekly video essays analyzing my favorite TV and movie shows and characters. Illuminati Pop also has its own Patreon where you get all of those videos uncensored. Subscribe to my channel, Olay Friends, for my podcast, Olay Friends. New episodes of Olay Friends come out every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to Olay Chill for new episodes of my podcast, Olay Chill, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And also, both Olay Friends and Olay Chill are both available on streaming platforms like Spotify. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes but you don't have an hour to spend. Subscribe to Illuminati Politics for my political analysis and my State of the Union type addresses on my show O Squared. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for my written work.